time to begin another verse in the song for Sir Waymar P. Royce. I am Matthew.
I am Lucas.
In today's episode, we are going to cover the event to end all events in event television.
Apparently. So one would have us believe.
I feel like a lot of context is needed for that event, but we are dedicating this whole episode to the last two episodes of the season, season 3, I should say. So we're going to cover episode 309 and 310, or how do they? I always forget how they break it down. Episode 29 and episode 30. We're going to cover the reigns of Castamere. No, the reigns of Castamere.
The reigns of Castamere.
No. Misha!
But nobody knows the reigns of Castamere. If you go around and you say, oh yeah, I just watched the reigns of Castamere episode, they're going to look at you like, what? But then you say, it was the Red Wedding. They'll go, oh yeah. That's when the show begun for me. The show had not begun until that episode. Now the show really begins.
I feel like we're gonna have I have such a weird relationship with it, which you'll find out why when we start talking about it. But yeah, like to the point where I thought the episode was called The Red Wedding, which would have probably been good, but no, because should we just start talking about the episode?
Let's do it.
All right, so the Reigns of Castamere. I keep calling it the Reigns of Castamere, but it's really the Reigns of Castamere. It's a song, and they talked about that song. When did they talk about that? Like on the Bear and the Maiden Fair, on the Climb? Do you remember when they even mentioned the song?
I don't remember when they mentioned it, but I do remember they were talking about it. And it was about how basically Tywin took down 2 houses, which, are the families. Kind of like, Michael Corleone taking out the 5 families, but it was Tywin Lannister taking down 2 houses.
I think he took down Reigns and the Castameres. I saw a comment on one of the YouTubes of the song. Okay, so first off, the MVP of this episode, the Reigns of Castamere, is Ramin Dawanda, because his music's amazing. The fact that you can hear the first couple notes of that song, if you watch the show, you hear those first few notes, and even if you don't know what's coming, you start listening to those notes, and then all of a sudden it's just like, uh-oh, that sounds ominous, that's not good, and then it just sticks with you, because Ramin Dawanda is good at his job.
Right, exactly. That music just, everything changed, and it's very much, when you're watching television, right, like you've got all the visual cues, and then you also have the sound cues. And when things changed, where you're like, oh, this is a good wedding, and look, Edmure's happy, his wife isn't hideous. Frey is actually comely. Imagine that. I didn't, but apparently so. And then you've got all the visual, and you see everybody kind of laughing. Rob and Talisa are hanging out, and they're happy, and just things are really good. And then you hear the song, and then Caitlin looks at Roose.
Bolton, that freaking guy.
His mailed hand. I know, that freaking guy.
All right, I'm gonna have to make notes here because we need to talk about. And it ties into episode 10. We have to talk about Roose Bolton because there's something really there's something I find really interesting about his whole dilemma and what the writers talk about. So Roose Bolton. Nope. Nope. Roose Bolton. All right. So yeah, you see the well, should we just go into we should probably talk about the rest of the episode first, right? Or do you want to just
Let's do it. Yeah.
Just do you want to just completely bury the lead and just go straight into it?
No. We can talk about it. So I thought that it was basically it's 2 of the storylines that I feel well, I was very interested in. If I hadn't read it, even when I was reading, these are like 2 or 3 storylines that I was really interested in. And I felt like they tied it all together, except for one storyline that didn't really fit. And that was Daenerys. So
yeah,
the thing with me is that Jon betrayed the wildlings in this episode. And the phrase betrayed Robb. And so I felt like it had a very strong theme running throughout the episode, all about just betrayal. And then you've got Daenerys, and just didn't really kind of fit with the theme, but maybe it was good to have it in there to kind of draw away from that theme for a little bit and then revisit it.
Yeah. Well, we also had Samwell, didn't we? Samwell appears in that episode. Summon Gilly, continue the march.
Oh, okay. Actually, I gotta pull up the episode summary.
Why was Sam in this episode?
I don't know.
Sam was in this episode.
Yeah, so Sam and Gilly are walking south. Yeah. And they have to go and, get through. Oh, and Bran, that's right. Bran was in the episode
because he saves Jon Snow.
He saves Jon Snow. He does. Okay, so that's right. They're in a hidden mill. Abandoned mill. That's what they say on Wikipedia. And then that's where Hodor starts going. Is that where Hodor starts going crazy?
Yeah, Hodor goes bonkwas, and he's like, Hodor. Yeah. No.
Starts to
sending a message that just says Hodor.
And storm. That's what's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be raining and storming and miserable. I remember when I got to this part in the book, which in Storm of Swords is about page 700. And at least for the Red Wedding part. The stuff with Jon happens later. But the Red Wedding stuff is like 700 pages. Now, for those of you who do not know the length of this book, is it like 1,100 pages? I think it's like 1,100 pages.
I mean, I think it would have to be because the showrunners said that they had to split up A Storm of Swords into 2 seasons. No, seasons.
It is. It's 1,128 pages. So when this happens around page 700, that's like 65 to 70% of the way through the book. And it seems like such a climactic event where it seems like it's kind of the end. It's sort of the same with Jon, where he betrays the wildlings, but with Jon, the story really does continue. But yeah, so also the setting in the book is a little bit different. May I indulge?
Yes.
Excellent.
This is the thing this is the thing I find the most interesting, and probably the thing that will get me in trouble, because it's interesting seeing what elements the writers change or the show runners change, and a lot of them you like and some of them I like, but there's others that I don't. And I think the Lady Talisa is always going to be something that we're just going to kind of disagree on, because I think and I'll tell you why when we get to all of like her death and everything like that. But I like having the contrast there to help me understand what was the original intent? What did they change? Why did they change it? For what reason? Like, for example, they don't have it storming, even though it's storming in the books. I understand that they just didn't have the money, especially at that time. If they did it a couple seasons later, they had a ton of money. They ended up throwing money at this show, which is kind of smart because I'm sure that they got a ton of return on investment. But the fact that they didn't have enough money, and also that would have been terrible to shoot in the whole season. That's probably 2 years of just people in rain the whole time. But anyway,
I wouldn't say the whole season. I would say half. When you're good at something, you don't do it for free. Yeah. How much do you want? Half. Just half the season could have been in rain, not the other half.
I saw just quickly. I was reading this thing about like memes that have aged badly or like photos that have aged badly, and one of them was this photo. Like Jared Leto had retweeted this picture, and it was Jack Nicholson as Joker with his hands, like his arms massaging Heath Ledger's Joker, and he's like, "It's okay, we are in good hands with Jared Leto," and I'm just like, oh no, how little we all...
cringing.
Oh god. But I just don't like Jared Leto, so... Anyway, so set the scene for the book. No, the book.
All right. Well, Jojen has been the one that's been telling them, hey, we got to get off the road. Get off the road!
Get off the road!
I am foreshadowing that will not be my last Lord of the Rings impression of the night. No, I've got a great Lord of the Rings drop later on. Just foreshadowing. Maybe I'm building it up too much. You don't know when it's going to hit, but it will. I'm secretly excited. I shouldn't have even told you about it. Anyways.
Probably not, because now if you don't have it, like, I'm going to scrub through and I'm going to be like, hey, Lucas, do you remember when you teased the Lord of the Rings thing and then it never happened?
Aww.
So you have to...
Well, I wrote it down. That's why I'll remember it.
Okay.
Anyways, it's been Jojen who's been directing them, and Bran's like, oh, let's go to this town. This is a really good town. We'll get some nice food and a warm, a fire and things like that. And Jojen's like, no, we have to keep going. And Jojen's really creepy. Like, maybe not creepy, but he's just unsettling.
Okay.
He speaks weird and everything. And he and his sister are frog eaters. They're from the swamps. They're called Crannog men. And they're in the swamps, and so they eat frogs. So they're, like, not the nicest. They're kind of like, in Princess and the Frog, where you got those, like, people in the swamp, and they're kind of all weird. And that's sort of what what everybody thinks of the people in the Neck. Is it the Neck or the Reach? One of those. The swamps, right by Moat Cailin. That I know, it's right by Moat Cailin. I'd have to look at the map quickly. So anyways, they're walking north, and Jojen's been kind of telling them what to do, and Bran's been a little upset about that, because he's like, hey, I'm the prince. I'm supposed to be the one that makes the decisions, but we always listen to Jojen, and Jojen always does it. Kind of like how you and I were growing up, where I would be like, oh, Matt, you're in charge, and then I'm like, let's do this, and you're like, what the heck? I love you, bro.
It's okay. It's Game of Thrones. It makes sense you uncover something painful. Game of Thrones is pain. Anyway.
Pain. Oh, I was right. It was the Neck. I was right the first time. Haha. That's right, because the Reach is in the south.
No.
That's by Highgarden.
I need to find a good map of Westeros.
They're hard to find. Anywho. So there's kind of this weird, not rivalry, but Bran's been a little like, whatever. But he takes it in good humor. Like, that's really cool. Because a lot of the characters in this book, and there's like 1,000 characters in these books and in the show, they would not be that nice. So already Bran is showing that he's a little bit different cut than most of the folks on Westeros. Along the way, Bran and Mira have been having this like super flirtatious thing going on. They're kind of joking and jiving and just japing. They call it japing for jokes. And they have really good rapport and talk and stuff, and just, you can tell there's something there. By the way, I did not get that feeling in the show.
No.
Nope, not at all. You just figured that they were just like everybody else, dark, boring, trying to survive.
Well, so far,
that's like 90% of the characters.
I mean, so far Jojen's in the, and again, I have my, we every week or every time we do this, we go into how I have issues with the pacing of this show, but they also didn't have Jojen, like Mira and Jojen have been in the show less than they were in the book at this point, right? Because technically they should have been here starting with like the last couple of episodes of season 2. Probably the last like 4 episodes of season 2. 4 or 5.
Now, I didn't actually mind too much that the showrunners included them later and the way they did. That was okay. I actually did not have a problem with that because it's hard to find the actors and the contracts and stuff, and that is a limitation of television versus a book where your only limitation is your imagination.
Right.
Anywho, they could have had more flirting in the show. They could have had the Bran actor and the Mira actor try to flirt, but I don't know if the actors could have pulled it off. Maybe they tried. Right? Like that's the thing, right? Oh, let's try this scene. And then they watch this scene and they're like, no, we're not going to do this. Is that a possibility, you think?
Yeah, it's a possibility.
You don't sound convinced.
I think that the writers have other things that they want to focus on, and it's not Bran. So...
but, that's where it kills me. It just kills me. There's all these big things happening, and you got to focus on the human stuff, the stuff that we all relate to, little, childhood love and things like that,
Yeah, I know. I think it also just, I feel like they're probably just uncomfortable with it as well. Maybe. Just because, I don't know. There could be a million reasons. The actors might not have been up to the task. The writers might have decided that in the limited screen time that they have them. Because Jojen, to me, is a lot different in the show than he is from what you described. Then again, I find the actor very engaging in general. I like that guy.
Same.
No Love Actually kid. Who's been in a ton of stuff.
That's how we know him.
That's how we know him. But he's been in a ton of stuff, and he's generally pretty good.
But he's still the Love Actually kid.
Yeah,
even after his career's taken off, he's still the Love Actually kid.
Oh yeah, Liam Neeson's still my dad. But I
he's
just
still
wonder,
taken.
I just wonder if one of the things that the showrunners are just we don't feel like writing it. We don't need to dwell on this at all. Not that they don't like Bran, but that they have other things that they want to get into. And also maybe they're just not up to the task of writing something like that. Is my idea behind it. I don't think their characterization or their character work is the strong point of D.B. Weiss and David Benioff. But maybe that's just me and I'm just an asshole on the internet who's saying these things.
I kind of I agree there are definitely things to prioritize, but this is where what's interesting about what we've been talking about is I think you and I feel like the things that they're prioritizing are the wrong things. And other things that we thought they should be prioritizing, those are what they should be kind of focusing on, but they're not. They're kind of focusing on other things, which, but those are opinions vary.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also yeah. But go on.
I could see.
I will say that some of my opinions are also colored by some of the videos I watched before we even started this thing. 2 years, last year. Some of those videos, some of the articles that I've read. So my opinion is obviously very colored based off of it. I already am not. That from the start, I wasn't really happy with the way that they had decided to go with starting the show and the structure of when they started it. I wasn't on board with how they structured each episode of the show. Right. And a lot of that hasn't changed. A lot of the structural stuff I still absolutely hate. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Jojen doesn't. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, before I continue, the only other thing I want to say is that I could just picture David Benioff just from the article that we were reading. I can just picture him sneer and say, nobody wants to watch a relationship between a 13-year-old boy and 14-year-old girl. Nobody wants, that's not good television. Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants that. I could see him saying that. But I think that's wrong. They're on this horrible, dark, dreary journey. You need to have some light and glimmer and just... Okay. Point made.
There's a reason why the last part of season 1 hits so well. There's a reason, I'm going to just say it now, the last part of season 3 hits so well. Both of those hit well because it ends on a note of hope, because people like hope. People like good things happening. And there's a moment where they're talking about the show and this episode, just to briefly jump ahead, and they're like, bad things happen to the good guys, and you know what? Bad things might continue to happen, and hey, who knows? Evil may win in the end. Well, we just don't know. We don't know. And it's like, it's like, you guys don't know where you're going with the show. That's distressing. Obviously they probably
and if evil wins, maybe I want to watch that show.
Yeah, like, maybe I want to watch the show where all the bad guys win. It's like, okay, I'm glad, like, I don't know, I was gonna say, like, I'm glad, like, The Boys came out. No, The Boys. But like, no, but that's obviously not the case.
Yeah. Okay,
anyway,
so I'll go back to the
Jojen. Yeah. So Jojen is not happy going to this town. Bran is like, let's go to the town. He's flirting with,
Mira.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I was gonna say it with Mira.
And it's very like under the radar too, because he's like a really shy, awkward kid, but he still has these feelings, and and even when you're reading it, he doesn't outright say it for like a long time until spoilers, book 5, but. He has these feelings, and when you're reading it, you can get the feeling that he does, but it's not stated. It's almost like, from his point of view, he's kind of fighting down those feelings in a way. It's really interesting. So yeah, they're following Jojen, and then they come to this castle, and the castle is called Queen's Crown. So Queen's Crown is named after, there was one of the Targaryens, I can't remember her name. I want to say Rhaenys, but I'm probably wrong. But she flew the dragon, and she would go and visit the wall. And then she would crown this area here as Queen's Crown, because that's where she would stay. But from my imagination, it's this castle that's in the middle of the lake. Just this kind of spire in the middle of the lake. And so the lightning is happening, and the rain is starting to fall, and Hodor's going nuts. Hodor! But they get into the castle. But the interesting thing is, how did they get into the castle? Because it's in the middle of this like watery area. Well, there's this hidden causeway. And if you don't know the steps, you're not going to make it, because the moat around it will just swallow you whole. So it's like the steps are underwater. So you have to know where the steps are, and you have to follow the right path in order to get to there. So it's almost like you're walking on water as you get to this castle in the middle of water. And I thought that was really cool. And so they went there, and then they're in this castle in the middle of the water. Jon Snow is coming with the wildlings down on the other side. And on the other side, he also recognizes Queen's Crown. So he tells them that and everything. And then he hears things from that castle, because Hodor's going nuts from all the lightning. And Jon knows how to get there, because how did they know how to get there? Neddard Stark, aka Deddard Stark. He taught them this stuff. Like that's something really cool. Like their father passed down this hidden knowledge to them of how to get to that castle in the middle of the lake, and all this, the lore and everything behind it. And so they hear it, they're like, oh, let's go there to explore, but they don't know the way, they can't get there. So they're like, whatever, it's just lightning. But that was very tense. And then Orell, I think he sends his hawk to go investigate.
Freaking Orell.
Or his eagle.
God.
I know.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So yeah, then Bran jumps into Hodor's body, and so in the show, I thought it was very dramatic, and I thought it fit, because he was like, I can't do it, I'm not strong enough, and then he ends up doing it. Well, in the books, their whole journey, he's been practicing the whole time, and he's been in summer the whole time, and in fact, he loved to be in summer so much that he hated to return to his body. Imagine this. You're a direwolf. You're like king of the wolves. You're hunting. You're the king. All the other wolves bow to you, and you're just in charge of the pack. You're pack leader. You're the best. You're dominant. You take your kill. You get the best food and all this stuff going on, and like this is your world. And then you got to return to your own body. That's cold and hungry, and you can't walk.
Quickly
so crushing.
Quick pin, because that's literally, James Cameron must have read that book and thought that would be great to do in a movie, because that is Avatar. That's
yes!
Avatar. No, it gets it gets worse. Originally, the Na'vi were supposed to be four-legged creatures. Four-legged cat-like creatures. No, I'm not. He literally... I think he had to change the design of them. One, to be more appealing to, like, the crowd. But two, also because it's, like, borderline plagiarism at that point. Like, literally...
Wow.
Borderline plagiarism. Because Sam Worthington's character... No, Juxali. Because his character is a paraplegic. He doesn't have the use of his legs. And the thing that he loves about being in an avatar is that he gets to use his legs. And when he comes back, he's all drained and tired and upset. And yeah. So anyway, go on.
Wow, that was cool.
Yeah, you got oof. We're going to crack the code on this. George, listen to our podcast. Sue James Cameron. He stole Braun from you.
He did. Bran, not Braun.
I know. I messed up there.
Because Bran has one N in his name and Braun has two.
True. Also, yeah, that's true. That's the difference.
Let's forget the vowel
between them. Yeah, exactly.
Because when you're English, you can't tell it apart.
Exactly.
Or at least when you're an American listening to an English accent, you can't tell it apart.
My name is Brian. Anyway, I'll cut that out. Because that's your joke.
Stop mispronouncing my name.
I just said it. It's Brian. No. You're pronouncing it wrong.
No, you're...
Brian. That's what I said. I said Brian.
With a Y.
It's Brian. Why aren't you getting this right? You freaking moron. No, we call her Brienne of Tarth, but we could probably just call her Brian of Tarth too. No, Brien, Brian of Tarth. Anyway.
Yeah, and for those who are on the outside of the Brian humor, here's because Matt has been saying Brian with an I, but his name's actually spelled with a Y.
So, if you're not pronouncing it correctly, then you're literally insulting him. Like, straight up to his face. Poor Brian. No one can say his name. They just can't get my name right. All right. We're never going to get through this storyline. All right. So
I know. All right. So, but the other events happen pretty much lockstep. John's, confronted with killing him and he just can't kill an old man, and you don't blame him, but Ygritte comes in and slits his throat. Not with the arrow. No, not clean. With the throat, gets all that blood and stuff everywhere, and now John's very conflicted. Like, oh my gosh, like, she is what she is, but I have super strong feelings. He's not sure if he loves her, but he's got really strong feelings for her, obviously. But then also, she just killed a man in cold blood. There was nothing he could do. He was just captured and just, so there was a lot there. Another theme of this episode.
I need to pin that because
oh, please.
Right, we need to pin that because I'm going to make the declaration. TV show Jon Snow is a passive character because Ygritte is the active one in that scene. And I'll tell you, and we'll kind of go into a reasoning why. And more specifically, Ygritte is the active character. I'm interested to see what happens like after this moment, because in the next episode when Ygritte shoots a bunch of arrows into him, and I think I got your next Lord of the Rings reference, but anyway, Ygritte shoots a bunch of arrows in and he crawls his way away. Like, he is declaring love for her, and she is the one who's conflicted whether she's going to shoot him or not. So she's making the choices there. Now, that might be the same in the book, but if it's not, then it's just another way that they move Jon Snow's agency away from him. Like, we've had a series of moments in the show where Jon Snow feels like he doesn't have any agency. And that's just another one of those moments where it feels like he doesn't have agency.
Yeah, and if they follow the books, you are going to see that again for a while.
Where he doesn't have agency?
It's not... Yeah, that won't be the end of it. That's probably why the showrunners like Jon Snow so much, because he's kind of easy to write for television. Like he's very clear motivations. He's like, his feelings are very clear and raw and understandable for a lot of males. Like the showrunners.
Yeah, I just had a giant smile.
That was where I was going with that.
I think it's funny. But all right, so Ygritte slits the dude's throat, and Jon Snow is like, maybe this is a toxic relationship, and
and he's like, I'm out of here. So he actually just kind of runs and escapes and starts getting on there, and I think they start calling after him, and he just gets arrows flown at him, and then one is in his leg. And the wildlings, they all have the fletching, the little feathers and stuff at the end of their arrows to kind of indicate who shot the arrow. And it's only in his leg. He doesn't get shot like, bam, bam, bam. No, just one shot in the leg. But he's riding bareback. He's losing a ton of blood. He can barely stay awake. And he barely makes it to Castle Black. But yeah, he totally collapses. But it was just like an epic ride on the way back. I couldn't stop reading. I was like, no, what's gonna happen? But he made it there all the way back, and he did have agency in that scene because he chose not to kill the old man, and he chose at that moment to run away and warn Castle Black, and that was his moment. The character's always thinking in his head, but you forget on the show because you're not in Jon's head. But in the book, every single Jon chapter leading up to that moment, he hears Corrin's voice in his head saying, when the moment is right, that's when you strike. It's not quite like that, but it is right. Like, infiltrate them, do what they say, all this stuff, and when you find your moment, take it. And that was his moment, and he took it.
Okay. So, I knew he had agency in that scene because I knew he had agency in that scene, but the thing you said afterwards of like he's conflicted because he loves her, but also he still sees her as this. To me, it seemed more like the camera ended up dwelling on Ygritte's response, and then in episode 10, she's the one who has to make the decision whether she's going. Like, it feels like it's squarely placed on her, and he's just like trying to talk her down from it. So that's why. But anyway, okay, so he escapes to Castle Block.
Castle Block. Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything
so
else.
Does Bran in the book, does he end up warging off on Hodor?
Yes, he does. And Hodor's mind is very scared. He's like, what's going on? Very confused, very scared. Not quite liking it, but not strong enough to fight back. Because most of the time, you can fight it back. If somebody's trying to enter your mind in that world, if somebody's trying to enter your mind, you can fight it off. And it's not right that somebody's entering your mind, but you can't, and taking control of your body, but you can probably fight it off. But I think Hodor, here I sound like the showrunners, I think that Hodor recognizes that it's Bran and lets him take control of himself in that moment. In addition, he doesn't really know how to fight back because he's Hodor.
Well, if I had to make an assumption, I would say that Hodor's a very simple person, and his mind isn't quite as advanced as some of the other characters. So when he hears Bran in his brain, he probably, if I were in Hodor's point of view, I would think that he's probably thinking that Bran is kind of right next to him, and he's been commanded by Bran so many times it only makes sense in his head to also follow that command. Anyway. I think I could like hold myself from laughing while you're talking. I'm sorry. Oh, and then right here at the end of the in the North on Wikipedia, it did remind us that yes, Bran asked Osha and Rickon to leave and go to the Umbers. So in the books, Osha and Rickon had left from Winterfell instead of traveling along with them. Right. So I think it was really for Osha's character. Does Bran enter Summer's mind in the book to help Jon Snow?
Yes. Okay. Yes, they have to help him. He's just one. So it's Game of Thrones, or I should say, it's Song of Ice and Fire, where it's quite realistic, where he's surrounded by like 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 to 20 like wildlings all around him. He can't fight his way out just him alone. So the wolves start causing a lot of chaos, and this and that happens, and that's when he gets away. He rides bareback and barely stays alive, barely stays awake to get back to Castle Blood.
So, like, normally I would agree with you with what you just said, But the storyline in Yunkai completely diverges from what you just said. So we'll talk about that in a sec. Did you have anything else to say about the North?
I know. I am done with the North.
Okay, so all I will say about it with Beyond the Wall and the North is it had to be difficult as the showrunners to decide what to put in this episode and what to put in the next episode. Because you have to pad out the episode. Like, this is the issue that we constantly are running into where we're like, what goes where? Why does it feel like they want to push every storyline forward a couple feet and then it feels like nothing significant is happening, even though a lot has happened, I guess. Apparently a lot has happened with the North this season, which we'll recap at the end. But that's all I have to say about it. Like, it must have been hard to decide what to put in here and what to save for the next episode. I have my own thoughts on it, but we'll talk about that, I think, at the end.
Yeah.
So let's jump over to Yunkai before we talk about the event everyone has been talking about.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't talk about it back then.
Yeah.
But that's because all my friends are awesome. Yeah. And I love them very much.
Another shout out.
Thank you, friends.
Another shout out to your wife and to Mario and Gabe and Paul and John and who else do you know watched the show?
Family,
friend, other
my
friends.
relatives-in-law. Just oh my gosh, everybody. Yeah, everybody.
I don't know. Yeah, there's a handful of people who I don't think watched the show, but yeah. So all right, Yunkai.
Yunkai.
No, Dario. I want to call him Dario Argento. He's a famous Italian director of these like really bad films. But Dario Jora.
Let's do it, Argento.
Dario Jora and Grey Worm. Here's the thing. Okay, so they decide to like invade, and they invade.
They do.
But then it's like the alert goes off, like Grey Worm is sneaking around, and then like an exclamation point appears over one of the guys' heads, and they're like calling in for backup, and all of a sudden it literally becomes like Metal Gear Solid in Westeros, and they're surrounded by a bunch of people. And I'm like, okay, they're done for. Oh shit! Oh shoot! This is really bad. I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And then it's just like they kill them all, and there's like 20.
Not only do they kill them all, none of them get wounded.
No. And then they're surrounded by even more people, and then it cuts to Daenerys being like nervous, and then like they come in and they're like, they have surrendered. Which to me, I was like, did they surrender? But it's important because they need to end on a high because they're about to go to a low when they cut to the next scene. But like,
yes.
So like, it betrays everything that we've known about the show up until this point, because I know not to trust these guys when they're like, they surrendered the city. I'm like, no, they didn't. That's BS. Also, how did 3 guys defeat like 20 or 30 men? Maybe it was only like 10, but still, like this.
Well, there was like 4, right?
Because
you had Grey Worm, who's an Unsullied. Okay, if you send 4, why not send 5?
They only sent.
Okay, you could have sent another Unsullied there. Like, you don't need to send.
Yeah.
It was Grey Worm, and was it Barristan the Bold?
No,
or
it was just 3 of them. It was Dario Jora and Grey Worm.
They didn't even take the best fighter that they have.
No.
Which is Sir Barristan. He's the best fighter they have.
I know.
That's right. He had to stay back to guard the queen. But still, like, just 3 of them against... There was like 20, and then they got surrounded.
What the heck?
And then they...
Yeah. What the heck? All right. How does this happen? How does this go down in the book?
Lots of wheeling and dealing on Daenerys' part to try to get all these sellsword companies and her Unsullied together. And not only that, but the people from Astapor, some of them were fighters, and they had to surround this. They had to like flank the city and attack from the front, and it was an actual battle, and like city warfare. But at a certain point, the city fell. So it wasn't like, oh, let's sneak in and kill a couple of the slave guards and then the rest of them will just like bow down. Like, oh, they'll stop fighting. And no, it's like an actual battle. Like it's
what the heck?
Yeah. She's Daenerys the Conqueror.
What?
She is Daenerys the Conqueror.
What?
And they go into the strategy too. Like you could do that. You don't even have to show any of the battle. You can just have it all through dialogue.
Oh my god. What are?
Because that's the way it happens in the books. Daenerys doesn't go into the city at all. She's not even there for any of the fighting. But they come back and they're like, oh yeah, we attacked from the front and the sides and this, and then we took this strategic part of the city, and then after that we held it, and we killed the slave masters and set them free immediately. They stopped fighting, and
well,
it was just a little different.
They certainly made a decision. They certainly chose to go in a direction. What the heck? What? I need to check something on the bear.
They fight at.
Yeah, I think there's a reason George was just like, I'm not touching the Daenerys stuff. I'm gonna let D.B. Weiss and David Benioff do their own thing. So there's a way. I don't know. I wonder if maybe they chose an obscure-ish passage from the book where they do sneak in, and they're like, oh, well, we can't do this huge battle. We don't have the money. We need to find another way of doing it. Let's have this like cool stealth segment where they have to fight a bunch of guys. I don't know.
During the battle too, I had to. That's right. I remember this now. Oh my gosh. That's right. Okay, I'm so sorry. I was looking at a chapter summary, and just a couple of keywords hit me. It was a battle. Like, her and Sullied were in there. It was a straight up battle. But Daenerys wasn't there. Sir Barristan was with her. Jorah was out there in the field, and so was Grey Worm. And at this point, Daenerys was very nervous because she was like, I don't know, like, Sir Jorah kissed me in like the opening chapter of Storm of Swords to set up the drama between the two characters throughout the entire book. They don't have that in the show. Anyways,
no, but I think like they kind of tease it. I like the idea of old Jorah Mormont not like kissing super young Daenerys, but doing it. True. Or like changing it and doing it in a tasteful way. Like in a book, you can kind of get away with it because maybe you forget that Daenerys is 14 or 15 at this. Maybe she's 15 at this point. I don't get any sense of how
15.
Much time has passed in the show, which I hate. I think if I had one huge issue with the show, that would be the other one, is that I don't get a sense of how much time has passed.
Right now, it's about let's see, 1 year. 1 year was a Game of Thrones, and Clash of Kings was about a year and a half. So we're probably about like 3 years into it. So by now she's
17,
around 15.
She started at 14, I thought.
She starts 13. 14. Okay.
So,
yeah, she's probably around 17.
16 or 17.
Basically, she's Alexander the Conqueror, right? Didn't he sweep his army through when he was 16?
Something like that, yeah.
No, it was very clear to me that that's sort of the trajectory of her.
Okay.
Of her character, or like maybe not the trajectory, but like the parallels. So during the battle,
we need to talk about
Sir Barristan.
We need to talk about themes at the end of this episode. Then, all right.
Yes. Barristan actually tells. Put it this way: Daenerys is really nervous because Sir Jorah kissed her, so she does have a little bit of. She is kind of caring about him, like I'm very confused about this kiss, but he's out there fighting. He might not come back. He does come back. And during the fight, though, she's very nervous, and she asks Barristan to tell her about her brother, Rhaegar. And so you get a little bit of backstory there. I don't know how much, I'm not going to say anything because they might reveal it all in the show. But it was just about Rhaegar, and just, I guess, super briefly, he wasn't a fighter at all. He was more of a scholar, and he was very interested in music and this, and he would create all these songs, and he was a musician and a scholar. Yeah, and then he learned how to fight, and he was really good. So, and then all of a sudden the battle's over, and they all come back and they convene and they talk about how it happened.
You can tell.
But no, it was actually a battle.
You can tell the show is written by a nerd because he's like, oh yeah, I'm the scholar who's also just really good at fighting too. I'm like, I was gonna say that's the ultimate male fantasy like power trip, but it's not. It's like the ultimate like nerdy male fantasy power trip. Anyway,
it is.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. And they attacked at night, and the cell swords that did not go with Daenerys, they were super drunk and they couldn't do anything, so they all got slaughtered. Or as they say in the show, put to the sword. Like, that's how they should say it in the show. Well, I should say that's what they say in the books. In the show, I don't know what they say. But put to the sword. And when you burn a town, it's called put to the torch. I like that. It's a very elegant way of saying that. Yep. So then they killed them all. But the Titan's bastard, Marrow, who actually Dario killed in the show, but in the book, he like fled and escaped. And so it's like, oh my gosh, he's some like assassin that's still out there. And you know, you don't know when he's going to come back. And he does come back, but spoiler alert, he dies.
He's ultimately put to the sword. How does he die? Because he's already
put
dead.
To the sword.
He's already dead in the show, so maybe they were like, we don't want to waste our time with him.
He gets really close to Daenerys and is about to kill her. And Barristan's there, barely. And he's there and he beats Marrow down. And it's in that moment where Jorah watches him fight and says, "Oh, you're Barristan the Bold." And he's like, "I am."
Okay. So that comes literally at the end of Storm of Swords.
Yeah, towards the end. And I was like, oh, I was so excited. Yes, for Barristan.
Dude,
he's the best.
When he pulls off his hood at the start of the season, I was super pumped. So I can't imagine how excited you were at the end of Storm of Swords. I can't imagine how excited you were at the end of Storm of Swords just from what I know about the book. Like, oh my god. Anyway, we'll get too far off topic.
Shall we move?
So, yeah, I wonder what went through their head. I wonder why they decided to change the story as much as they did. It feels really weird. And again, it like indirectly takes Daenerys kind of out of the story and focuses on like the guys. Like, hey guys, let's, blah, blah, blah. And then...
Yeah, let's go, crew.
And then it ends it, like, I think they were trying to do what George R.R. Martin did at the end of Blackwater, which I think like every now and then I just think about Blackwater because I'd been editing the episode. I think about Blackwater and I'm like, maybe I should just like put it on, and like sit back and have fun, because Blackwater is like a great episode. It's like a great bubble episode too. You can just watch it because it's all self-contained. You don't have to worry about the advancing storyline.
Yes.
Like every single thing in there is like a nice little thread.
I love that episode.
The more I think about it, the more I'm like, God, I just want to freaking go back and watch it.
But remember, Matt, this was the episode that changed television history forever.
It was. It apparently, because I guess this came out before or during Breaking Bad. Right? Like,
I don't know
Breaking
the
Bad,
I don't know
like,
the timeline.
As much as I enjoy this, like, Breaking Bad was so much more. They always talk about the show being cinematic, and I think it starts taking on a lot more of that cinematic, quote, cinematic, unquote, quality later on. Which I still am, like, kind of confused what people mean by, like, it's cinematic. With that said...
Just looked it up. Breaking Bad, 2008 to 2013.
So, this is 2013. So... I guess
this episode came out in 2013.
I guess because Breaking Bad could no longer change television because it was over, they decided Game of Thrones is going to be the successor. I know a lot of people who liked Game of Thrones better than
Giancarlo Esposito.
What?
I thought that the Giancarlo Esposito. Oh gosh, what was his name in that show? I know he's Los Pollos Hermanos.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Why am I losing it right now?
Because I think he's in the spin-off show too.
I can't get his name. No, there. Okay, I found it.
I did too.
Gustavo Fring.
No, Gustavo Fring.
No.
Oh my
Gustavo
god.
Fring.
Gustavo Fring was one of the best characters, like, ever conceived.
It launched his career, man. Yeah, and he's got a great career right now.
He has a great career, and he is in Better Call Saul too, which is kind of cool.
He kind of plays the same character, but it doesn't matter because he's just so
good. Like
I could watch it. I could watch him act like all the time.
Like
I haven't seen him play a good guy, but I'm sure he could too.
I didn't like him as much. Like I didn't like the series as much in season 5, and I think it's because Gustavo Fring is just such a great. Like Walter White is the villain of the show, but Gustavo Fring is a good counterpoint of like, this is how you be bad and still maintain a stable lifestyle, which I liked, like the contrast.
Everybody appreciated
and just
that.
his take on the character, how he's just always calm and measured, is like brilliant. Anyway,
yes.
So,
and shall we?
Yeah, let's talk about boom, 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 boom. The Reigns of Castamere. So, like, I guess I don't.
The events.
Yeah, I think it was one of the things I liked directorially about the episode, because for me, for some reason, I felt like the end was just sort of anticlimactic, and
that's a hot take.
I told you that, right?
You did. You said it, you have a hot take, and I just wanted to remind you that this is your hot take, and it's a hot take.
I guess so. I mean, like, I was shocked at it. Well, I wasn't shocked because I knew what was going to happen, because everyone had told me. I think the more shocking thing of, like, them parading Robb Stark with his direwolf's head on his decapitated body is just, like, so much worse to a degree. But, like, there was something about... And this is, I guess, the other thing, like... Because Caitlyn's kind of, like, half alive in the book, right? You'll talk about all of that, so I won't go into that. There was something about, like, the yell was great, but should have been long. Like, all of this is going to be really ticky-tacky stuff. So, like... You want to get into nitpicks? Sorry, editor and director of the show. We're going to get into nitpicks. I felt like her yell should have been longer. Because the creators talk about how they wanted everything to just be so long and uncomfortable. And then, like, I think that, like, I go back and forth on ending with her getting her throat slashed after she looks exhausted. Because I think you have to have her getting her throat slashed. But it was kind of like that one episode that D.B. Weiss and David Benioff directed, where it was like, it ended and then they started playing like goofy music, and it just kind of like undercut
I have
the
a
moment.
comment about that.
What?
Yeah, I do have a comment about that song. I'm so sorry. That song that ended when his hand got cut off, that should have been the ending song for the George R. Martin directed episode, The Bear and the Maiden Fair. When he took the girl out, that's when they should have ended on that song. I thought that would have been really good. And then the song at the end of The Bear and the Maiden Fair, which was a little bit calmer, a little bit more dark, that should have been when Jaime got his hand cut off. I think those two ending songs.
I think isn't that song The Reigns of Castamere? No, he sings it in episode 9. The Reigns of Castamere. Yeah. So an instrumental plays over the end credits in episode 7, The Bear and the Maiden Fair. So they play The Reigns of Castamere in that episode. So, but like building up to the scene, like, I don't know, I felt it was good because even though I knew it was coming, I didn't know when it was coming. And because I didn't know when it was coming, all of the stuff, and I guess it happens similarly in the book, but like, you know, like you're nervous, Brutus gets the wife and she's actually kind of pretty, but super young. So it's like super creepy to me.
Yeah. That's the same.
But he's fine with it. He's like, oh well, my 50-year-old,
sure he is.
My 50-year-old manhood could use a little bit of, you know, rejuvenation. And so like everything is going so well, and they have the like, but there's this air of, and I'd be interested about people who did not know what was happening if they felt this way. Because I knew what was coming, it was the old Alfred Hitchcock trick, where I'm kind of on the edge of my seat and my stomach's churning because I know something bad's going to happen. I just don't know when it's going to happen. And they, to their credit, they do build it up really well. Kind of. So here's what I mean. Inside of the episode, the elements that they use are really good because like they have all the good stuff happening. Jon Snow escapes, and then the Daenerys stuff happens, and you have the sort of anticlimactic but still very effective, like Jorah comes in and he's like, the slaves are with us. Even though I was anticipating, like, because we talked about how Jorah's betrayed Daenerys somehow, and I was like, I wonder if this is where it's starting to come into play. But that's that's tabled. Good things happen for Daenerys. And then... Yes.
And so it's like on the rise up, right? It's like, yeah this is great. Things are going good. And the wedding, and like it's building to a good point.
But I'm still wondering if people felt like there was, like the other shoe still had to drop. Because that's how I felt the entire time I was watching this episode was the shoe has to drop. And so then, you know, they have like the whole like, oh, the betting thing. And the lady Talisa is like, you guys have a strange custom. Ha ha ha. And Rob is like, it's tradition.
Yeah, that is strange.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
And then the Rains of Castamere start playing. And like, I think it's in like a minor chord or something. People who study music know much better than me. But it starts playing and they cut to Caitlyn, who I still feel like is underdeveloped in the show. They cut to Caitlyn and she looks concerned. And then it starts slowly churning. It's slowly churning. The gears are slowly getting in motion. And Caitlyn looks over and for some reason, Roose Bolton is like sitting there and like looking at her sinisterly with his hand just like kind of awkwardly leaning forward so that she can like
it was pretty weird
know beforehand what's happening, and she uncovers it and it's like, oh, it's armor. And I'm kind of thinking like, yeah, you know, why don't people wear armor? Like, why didn't they think that? And this is why it's so tragic and good, because like the whole time you're thinking like, why didn't Rob like prepare that something bad might happen? And it's just a series of mistakes he's made leading up to this moment. But that happens. She slaps him. And then you just see this guy that they had been teasing throughout the episode. I think, or was it? No. It was one of Walter Frey's kids who pulls out a knife and just starts going to town on Talisa's stomach, which is like horrible to watch.
Her womb.
Like,
it is horrible.
Out of all of the things in the episode, I think that was the most graphic thing that they showed.
Yeah.
Especially,
me too.
Especially because when Rob starts getting crossbow bolts to his body, they cut around it a lot, and I was kind of like, it dampened the impact for me. No pun intended. The impact of the crossbow bolts going into his intestines.
The Talisa onto or the knife onto the air, into the womb, into unprotected baby.
That's the thing. And like just, that was like super graphic, and like I guess it's probably graphic. Like good that they started with that, because almost everything else they do in that scene wasn't nearly as horrible as that in my mind.
Or shock factor.
Except I would have wanted them to keep topping themselves and making it worse and worse and worse. Because, like, they do have a lot of stuff where, like, Rob is, like, crawling on the floor bleeding. But none of it, to me, like, it was bad and it was terrible, but none of it was nearly as bad as that initial action. Like, that, and also seeing Talisa with, like, her face completely discolored from the blood loss and the death.
The one that stood out to me was the overhead shot where they're scanning the rune, and you just see the people just on top of other people just butchering them.
Yeah,
that was what always gets me, where I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, I don't know why. Like, I feel like I and that's why I think it's an editing thing, because like, so they go through all of that, they cut back to Arya, and like they also built her up where she's like, I'm here, like I can finally see my family again. And then she just sees all of them get massacred, and then they kill the dire wolf. And the Hound saves her. #Hound. he knocks her out and takes her away. And that's really all I have to say about the Arya stuff. Like that, they build up those moments really well of like the hopefulness, which also leads to the tragedy when the bad things happen. But then like it starts ending and she's like, Rob, run away, get away. Like, Lord Frey, please. Like, I beg you, my son, like, I promise you, blah, blah, blah. And it's, I don't know, it's weird. I'm sure it happened like that in the book, but it's also weird because it's like such an empty, like there's like nothing she can really do. Like I spare his life and I'll spare your queen. And like I guess that's an interesting reason, but also like he points out kind of the obvious, like you've already gone back on your promise once, like F you. One thing now, and then she kills the wife. Like they, Rob die. Like that was it. That the best part, which was kind of spoiled by reading the review, is when Roose goes up and is like, Tywin Lannister says hi, and like stabs him. I was like, that son of a what? Ah! Like finally I'm getting that like that feeling of Tywin Lannister is a dirty cheat and I hate him. And what happened with Roose is something that I think is really interesting that they start talking about in season 10 about his motivations for turning.
Or episode 10.
Episode 10, yeah. So Rob dies.
Yeah.
Catelyn kills the wife, and then she yells, and then she kills the wife, which felt really weird to me. Just like pacing wise felt weird. And then she just stands there, and like I keep going back and forth on whether I would have wanted like after she gets her throat slit, like she falls to the floor, and then they just cut to like a shot of all of the the floor on the floor of all of the massacre, kind of like the overhead shot you were talking about, as it either zooms in or pans up from just like Catelyn looking at Rob's dead body as it pans up and then fades out and then credits play, something like that. Again, controversial take because I think they're going for the shock factor, and also it'd been built up so much in my mind, like this massacre scene where I was imagining just like people off camera just throwing gallons and gallons of blood everywhere.
Right, red for their wedding.
So I feel like they got it. They got all the way to the finish line, and then they just kind of puked their entire lunch over it. Like God, you came so far, guys, and like it just wasn't quite. It didn't hit as effectively as it could. But I might be full of what because like I kept thinking about it until I got to watch the next episode, and like I was really down about it because I'd gotten good news that day, and then I was just so sad, and I was like, but you had that great news, and I was like, yeah, but I just watched the Reigns of Castamere. And they're like, what?
Wait, what's the Reigns of Castamere?
The Reigns of Castamere. The Red Wedding. Oh, the Red Wedding! With all the dies and all the death and all the... No, it's the show where it just kills all the good guys and it's depressing. Because the showrunners are morons.
Yeah, that doesn't happen in the books. Rob lives.
I'm kidding.
Talisa
lives.
No, Talisa. No, she could very well live. I don't know this lady Talisa.
No, she doesn't.
And neither does Catelyn Stark, apparently.
Apparently not. And again, like... All right, so tell me your thoughts.
Show thoughts or book thoughts?
Start book... Well, hold on. Let's see here. If we're going to do this, I'm going to need another cup of coffee. Why don't you start with... Let's start with show thoughts, and then compare it to how it happens in the book.
Will do. I had, of course, read the scene, and it was very impactful, obviously. So, I knew it was coming, and then it was just... Well, I think, actually, I kind of told you my thoughts, really, as you were speaking. So... Because I knew it was coming, and I knew what was coming. It still didn't make it any easier to watch. And when you actually see it, and it's not like in your imagination, although to be fair, what I watched on the show was very similar to what I had imagined.
Good.
So that's probably why I was like very happy with that. Like I felt like they did a lot of really good stuff in that scene because it mirrored so much as to what I had envisioned in my mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, the only person happy about the red wedding in the show, my brother Lucas. No, but that's the thing, right? Like execution, again, no pun intended, is very important. Good execution is incredibly important. But go on. So the way they executed the execution was they mimicked the show really well, or the book really well.
Yes. And again, I think that the themes in this episode were very strong, and they did a really good job. They had the betrayal. John betrayed Egret and the wildlings. So that was a betrayal for the good guys. And Rob and Caitlin and company got betrayed by the Freys, which was a betrayal for the bad guys. Bran was super close to Jon. So close. He wants to see Jon so bad. And they just missed each other and they couldn't see each other. Arya was so close to Caitlin and Rob. Missed each other, couldn't see each other. And the Arya one just feels so painful. Just how close she got. But if she had gotten there, she would have died too. So, yeah, but you know, the two shocking scenes were the Talisa scene, and then that, like I told you, that panning scene where the camera moves across, you just see the butchering. That was like, and then of course Walder Frey sitting back laughing like, oh, that's right. So Walder Frey is now Emperor Palpatine. Oh yes, the bedding. Do it.
Do it.
Do it. Commander Roose Bolton, execute order number 66.
I never pulled that. No, George Lucas, why are you plagiarizing George R.R. Martin?
As all the killing's going on, he's just
Yeah.
So yeah, you got Palpy laughing like crazy in there, which is like kind of weird and yeah. Whew.
Just makes your skin crawl.
You and I, our mutual friend, like just stopped watching after that scene. Apparently,
no, he watched.
Like, he watched
the whole thing, but he chooses to watch every single episode up to there and then just stops. Yeah. I believe that's what.
Right.
I believe that's what he does. Because Robb Stark is his favorite for some reason.
For some reason. Gee, I don't know. Maybe it's because Richard Madden is an awesome actor, and maybe it's because the showrunners built it up so much. Oh, he never lost a battle, and the promise
I've never lost a battle
of a super epic battle between Tywin and Robb, and their armies just clashing to each other. That was like, oh my gosh, that was the promise, right? With like Stannis doing like whatever. Like Stannis has his red woman with magic, and Tywin's got all these armies and stuff going on, and then you have the Greyjoys that are betraying everybody, and then you got Robb, the White Knight, the one and only, never lost a battle. How is he gonna get out of this?
He's not.
Spoiler alert, he's not. He's not. Yeah.
Yeah. Robbed of his life. Terrible.
Indeed.
Terrible.
It was. So for this episode, my wife and I watched the show, one episode a night on Mondays and Wednesdays. So we watched 2 episodes a week. And we went and I'm getting into organic wines. Go ahead. Roll your eyes. I know y'all are going to roll your eyes at
California,
that. But they're very
boy.
good.
I need to drink my
They're
organic
very
wine.
good. And I raise my little finger when I do it. When I do it.
No, that Napa Valley Organics.
No, that Napalpatine organic wine. And the winery was called Frey Winery. No, the Freys.
And it's red wine, for all you know. It's blood!
Right? Take it from the red wedding itself. So I thought that was a great wine choice for the night. And it was. It's very delicious. Yeah. So for all those who are like rooting for House Frey, yeah, this is your episode. Boom. The Family Frey. Oh, it's not Family Feud. It's Family Frey, baby. Yes! My money was on the Freys the whole time. So before this happened, I just thought the Freys were just some like kooky family.
Yeah.
Because in the appendix, like you have... So in the appendices, or the appendix, they go through all the families and like a lot of the people that are there. Because there's hundreds of characters, kind of hard to keep them all straight. It really is.
Yeah.
So I'm like, wait, who is that again? How are they related? Are they just friends, or are they sworn brothers? Are they knights? Where are they? Who are in the King's Guard? So you look it up in the appendix, and most of the houses in the appendix have in chapter or in book 3 have 2, sometimes 3 pages. Yeah, the Freys have 6 because all of the wives and all of their children and all of their grandchildren and all their cousins are all listed in the appendices. All of them. And yeah, it's like 6 pages. All the other families, 1, 2, maybe 3. Bam! I was flipping oh my god, there's 6. Ha ha ha, how funny. Ha 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 ha. Oh wait, they kill one of the protagonists. Not so funny anymore.
I do appreciate how the show dedicated a good a couple minutes to just walk through some of the wives that he had, or some of his daughters. I was like, that's a nice touch.
Yes,
like that.
It was. That was nice.
Like that.
I did.
They devoted more time
to
his daughters than they did to some of the more interesting and fun side characters that you like.
And then I absolutely 100% loved that he forgot the name of him. Another Waldo. It was just, oh my god, that was so great.
Blah, blah. It's Mary, sir. Whatever. All right, so how does it compare to the book, though? What changes are there? I know you said it was super accurate, so...
Well, it was what I imagined. Okay. I didn't say it was accurate to the books, but it was what I would imagine.
Well, son of a gun. Okay.
In the show, the showrunner said that, when if you go back and you watch the whole series again, you could see everything leading up there. The clues were all there. Kind of. In the books, they are there. If you reread it, you will witness them and you will see it. The chapter summary I read kind of goes into it, where Tyrion's meeting with Tywin. And Tywin's what about Robb and all this stuff going on? And Tywin's eh. And so Tyrion makes a note in his head something's going on with this if my father is so relaxed about this.
Right.
So yeah, the signs are there, but in the book they're really subtle. You don't even know the Lannisters are behind it. No, the Lannisters don't send their regards in the books. They just don't. I'm sorry. They don't. You don't even know what's going on. It's just, you have no idea. It's just chaos. You have no idea what's going on. So I did appreciate that Roose Bolton put his hand over his cup because he wasn't drinking any wine because he wanted to stay sober. That was a great touch in the show. And I'm sure if you rewatch that scene, I haven't rewatched it, just the commentaries on it. I'm sure there's more signs in there, which is really cool. I bet you that there are. You're looking at
no, I don't. That's cool. I don't think there are as many as you think there are, because I was looking out for things. I don't think there are as many as you think there are, but most of it is built up through Caitlyn's reaction shots, which is how it should be. I think Caitlyn's the one who starts noticing that something feels off, and Caitlyn's the one who notices the Reigns of Castamere playing.
Yes, and that does happen in the books too. There is one big thing I think that I would have... So everything was fine, but there's one major thing that could have been really done in the show, and they chose not to. But when this is a little backstory here to give you context. When Rob first introduced his wife, which is Jane Westerly, not Talisa, the wolf was like okay about it, but there was this one uncle of hers, of the wife's, and the dire wolf did not like him. And so Caitlin was like, listen to the wolf, send him away. So he does. So they go to the Freys, they go to the twins. And Walder Frey's like, you can't bring your dire wolf in here. You just can't. And Caitlin gets super worried about that. She's like, I don't know. Like, that dire wolf is a part of Rob. Like, that wolf needs to be there. Like, I believe in these omens. Like, she becomes a Stark at the very end. She's like totally a Stark. Just heart and everything. Like, yes, these wolves are for my kids and this and this. And they're not letting the wolf in there. Like, that's really weird. But he's like the king and they're supposed to honor and do what he says. And they're not letting him bring his wolf in. Like, what's that about? Like, I get it that it's a wolf and it's kind of scary, but like, he's the king, So already they're not letting the wolf in. So Caitlin's already like kind of on edge. She's like really on edge. And she's really nervous about the betrayal. And then they could have set this up in the show. They could have said the same line that they have in the books. Rob, just go in there and whatever you do, drink the wine, take the salt so that you have guest rights. And when you have guest rights, you cannot be harmed. So then they show the ceremony, but they don't give you the context behind it. Because, when my wife and I were watching, like, oh, they're doing the salt. And she's like, what's that about? And I was like, oh, they're guest rights, So they could have thrown that stuff in there to where you're like, okay, well, no wolf, but guest rights? Yeah, okay, sounds good. But then the Umber, the one that the wolf in season 1 bit off the fingers of, who is like, who are you, whatever, yeah. And then all of a sudden he's like, yes, you're the best. He gets super wasted at the wedding. He gets super wasted because somebody else had to go cup for cup with him. And later on, it was revealed that was the plan. You got to go cup for cup with this guy to get him super drunk. And you got to get everybody else really drunk and totally unawares. And that's when they struck. 2 other notes, actually 3. Note 1, I got super suspicious when Roose Bolton went up and took a piss. He just left the room. He wasn't in there. Obviously for the show, I'm glad he was. For the drama of it. But in the books, he left. He was nowhere there. Because he was in on it.
Right.
2. The band was horrible. That's what Caitlin noticed right away. She was like, this band is terrible. Like, they're a horrible
because
band.
they end up shooting everyone.
Because they're archers and soldiers and they're not musicians. Exactly. The music was terrible the whole night. And then they started playing the Reigns of Castamere and it wasn't even that great. So they still played that song, but not well. And then they got up and started all the killing. And so, my wife liked that little detail too.
In the book.
And then the third thing, Caitlin tried to leave and then she looked and she pulled somebody and it just dumb luck. She looked back and it was revealed, oh yeah, that's a male shirt. So the killing happened, but the wife wasn't there.
Right.
Jane Westerly is Rob's wife in the books. She wasn't there at the Red Wedding. So she's actually alive. We don't know I don't know if she's pregnant yet. Don't know how that all plays out. But those were the differences. Oh, and then this happens too. I'm just going to read you the last line from the Arya chapter that immediately follows it. And, I'm sorry, before then, Caitlin. So she grabs Patchface, who's a fool. He's kind of a weird cousin. It's a guy. And she's like, I'm going to kill him. It's like, what? That's Patchface. No, you can't kill him. Like, he doesn't know what's going on. He's an idiot. He's a fool. She's like, don't kill Rob. Rob dies. So she's like, she kills Patchface. And she's thinking, I'm going to kill that old man. I'm going to kill that old man. It's going to be me. I'm going to kill him. And then she gets her throat slashed. And then she starts clawing at her head. And it's really weird in the books because she's like, it hurt, but then it felt pleasurable and sweet as she clawed. And then that was it. So, like, it felt good at the end. It was really creepy.
So,
I don't know.
And fast forward me to the
Yes.
I don't know. No. I was gonna say I kind of want to spoil something for you in the show. Like,
sure.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm not. Caitlin is dead in the show. Like, she's not coming back.
Oh, okay.
So I know that's a spoiler for you.
It
I know
is.
it's a spoiler, but I would rather you know that going in, because I have another question for you.
Instead of like assuming about right.
Yeah, well, right, because she comes back at the end of the book, right?
Yeah,
now
she does.
she scream. Does she still scream in the book?
She does.
And then when she comes back, she doesn't have a voice, right?
Right, because her throat was slashed.
So I also think it's symbolic that she it's almost like she's screaming that, because she loses her humanity when she comes back, right? It's kind of like I don't think it's like the Lord of Light thing. Like, you told me she's kind of more like a haunting spirit or something like that.
So here's when she died. The white tears and the red ones ran together until her face was torn and shattered, the face that Ned had loved. Caitlin Stark raised her hands and watched the blood run down her long fingers, over her wrists, beneath the sleeves of her gown, because she started, like, scratching at her head. The line before it is because she realized, like, all of her kids are dead. She thinks Arya's dead. Robb is dying in front of her own eyes. She heard that Rickon and Bran were dead from Winterfell. Sansa's the only one, but she's right. And so, yeah, the pain was just, the grief and everything was just too much, that her whole, all of her kids are dead. The genetics, the line is dead, but her children are dead. And then it goes like this: slow red worms. I think George R. R. Martin has a thing with worms, because worms show up kind of a lot in the descriptions and analogies. Crawled on her arms and under her clothes. It tickles. That made her laugh until she screamed. Mad, someone said. She's lost her wits. And someone else said, make an end. And a hand grabbed her scalp, just as she'd done with Jingle Bell. And that's the fool. Not Patchface, it's Jingle Bell. Ugh. No, don't cut my hair. Ned loves my hair. Then the steel was at her throat, and its bite was red and cold. So, the grief of it all. But what really got me was the next chapter was Arya. And the last sentence in the Arya chapter was, his axe took her in the back of the head.
Wow! What? Oh my god. But see, that's playing with the format. Like, that's brilliant. That's playing with the format. Okay, so...
Right.
Alright, so I will... This is... I know, I'm sorry I spoiled it, but I'm going to read this part to you. So,
please.
Caitlyn's resurrection following the Red Wedding was excised from the show. Showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss claimed they'd purposely left her out to avoid spoiling some stuff and to minimize character resurrections in the series, despite arguments to keep her from Martin. I don't know how much of an effect she has on the plot going forward. You can be the judge of that. But they clearly are okay with other character resurrections that might happen.
No, Beric Dondarrion!
Yeah, so it's weird. As we go forward, I guess I'll just say, like, it's weird where they choose to draw the line. At the same time, I felt like their version of Caitlyn Stark was very underdeveloped in general.
100%. She never had the relationship with her father, and I mean, yeah. And she's a fantastic actress. It would have been really, really, I bet she could just throw all that emotion onto the screen, dealing with her father who's lost his mind. Like, it would have been so... But
because they didn't have her father lose his mind, when she loses her mind as she's dying, it makes less sense. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that's just like... It'll get back to the article there.
Right.
So...
That's interesting. So to give context for those who are listening, in the epilogue of Storm of Swords.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Caitlyn dies, around page 700. Fast forward to page 1125, right? Like the rest, like the other half of the book. Caitlyn comes back, and what happens is that there's a couple of Freys and they're walking along, and then they get captured by outlaws. They're like, what's going on with these outlaws? Well, they take him over, and the outlaws, who are with Beric Dondarrion's crew.
No, the Brotherhood without
that
banners.
gangsta is coming back. They bring those two Freys in front of this hooded figure, and then they're like, wait, are these two of them? And she's not, or then the figure nods yes, and then she lifts it up, and I should have prepared for the podcast, but I need to. I was looking through it when you were talking, and I earlier in the podcast, and I couldn't find it, so I didn't want to keep like reading and searching for it. But I couldn't tell if Caitlyn had bright blue eyes, like the eyes of a white. I can't remember, and I couldn't find it in there, so I'll have to get back to you on that. But yeah, she was resurrected, and she nods like, "Yep, those were two Freys, and they were at the Red Wedding." And one of them's like, "But I was just watching. I didn't kill anybody, but I was what?" And then the outlaws were like, "Were they there?" And she's like, "Yes, they were." And then they got hung. And that's something that I feel is very important. Very important. Like, I felt like that was like a major, major thing. Because if you violate guests' rights, and they talk about this in the next episode, it's like something you just don't do. And as soon as at the end of Red Wedding in the books, I was like, oh my God. I just put the book down. I was like, the Freys are cursed. Because that's what happens. Like, if you do that, you're cursed. Like, the gods are just going to rain destruction and death upon you. And that's my immediate thought. I'm like, right, if they exist, this is true. But I just thought, like, they are cursed. They're going to meet a horrible end. Like, that was my thought. I'm like, they're going to meet a horrible end. And then, the book goes on or whatever. And then at the end, you're like, oh my God, Caitlyn's back. And she's hunting down the Freys. You're like, okay, that's a horrible end right there. Like, they're cursed. Yeah. Obviously, Caitlyn's alive. How did she get resurrected? What's going on with this? It's George R. R. Martin. There's things there. It's not just like, oh, just like, there it is. No, there's got to be a reason.
Well, especially the whole thing
the
about
showrunners decided no.
Sorry, you were saying the showrunners?
The showrunners decided, no.
Again, the thing that drove them, and I think we should move on to episode 10 because we've talked about this episode for a lot.
Yes.
But, the thing that drove them to do the show was the Red Wedding and the idea of like all of these characters that they loved or that they really liked dying in this way and then being like completely blown away. Now, I don't know if it was the idea of like, wow, that's crazy, and then going back and noticing all of this stuff and then being like, wow, the way that they layered it on is so compelling, or if it's just the shock factor. I don't know.
Could be a combination of both.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I would hope that the showrunners read the books like 3 times before embarking on this thing. But I don't know if they read it that many times. Maybe they just like looked up passages and this. But I think you kind of need a calm, like interesting read through like 3 times, and then you can be like, okay, I'm ready. Let's put this together. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like so many ways to go about it, and I do want to talk about all of that kind of stuff as well. But
go ahead. I'm so sorry. I got one more thing.
Yeah.
After I read what happened to Arya, I couldn't read.
Yes. Yeah.
I couldn't
Let's talk.
read.
Let's go. Let's be armchair psychiatrists. So, is it just because it was so like, if you had to deal with Arya's death on top of all of that, it was just too ruinous?
It was just too much. Yeah, and just, I mean, I read about Robb and Caitlyn and everything, and that was like, oh God, that was horrible. And it's like, oh, Arya, well, she's in the area too. I got to see what's gonna happen to her. And then all of a sudden the axe took her. I was just like, the next chapter after Arya is Tyrion. But I just like.
Did it ever occur to you to like flip forward and see if Arya had another chapter?
I knew that she was probably still going to be alive, but
there was still that
if you
there's still that voice in the back of your head like, no, this is it. The effect, it worked. You were literally afraid to turn the page.
I did not want to turn the page.
Dang.
I did not want to. Yeah, yeah. But I was so like depressed, and the enormity of what happened like made me just like stop. Now, there's a good reason why that this didn't happen at the end of the book. Because nobody would read the next one.
Well, it's also, I mean, here's the other thing. Like
that's why it's episode 9 and not the season finale.
Well, the other thing is like, yeah, that would be like, that's an awful, like I said, you want to end hopefully. You don't want to end depressedly, you know, like you could kind of end with concern. Like season 2 ended with like a really powerful like point of concern that I don't really feel like fully paid off yet. But anyway, but like, yeah, if you end with that people are just going to be super depressed for like a year, maybe even 2 as they wait for the next, you know, season to come out. So
Right.
I understand.
But I did learn a lesson. I learned a really, really powerful lesson from reading it. Because I noticed that, hey, after the whole Arya got the axe to the head, that was page 710. There's still 400 pages left of the book.
Yeah.
So the big lesson I learned was life goes on. And, you know, armchair psychiatrist, things happen. Really, really horrible things to characters in the books. And, you know, to a lesser extent, or not lesser, but I'm just not going to
No, it's sentence. True. Like it's
bad things happen, and you just keep going. And that's after like a day or 2 days, maybe even 3 days, then I started picking it up again. Like, okay, all right, let's start reading the next thing. And then like the book went on, and then you have these characters and they're doing this, and John has a whole nother like really important stuff, and it's just really, really like, oof, powerful. I think the Ygritte stuff happens after this in the books, where it's just like, oh man, I guess what's going on with him and this, and like it's just, you know, things keep moving, things keep going on, and that's a big lesson I learned. I also learned that. Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, I also learned that George R.R. Martin wrote that chapter of Catelyn's death. That was the last chapter he wrote in this book. Like he didn't want to write it, and he was just so scared and just dreaded it so much. That was the last chapter he wrote for Storm of Swords.
So, first to finish your thought about the George R.R. Martin thing. One thing, according to Wikipedia, Martin said that he killed Robb off because he believed audiences would assume that the story was about Ned Stark's heir avenging the death. And this was one way to throw them off of that path. And so then Richard Madden said, well, if you're doing that, then you might as well make sure that the baby doesn't survive, because it's a similar idea. So his suggestion is what got the child killed there. 2, it's like the lesser lesson to draw. Like, I think your lesson of like life goes on, the book goes on is like really powerful, because like I'm not going to say anyone who's experienced a death, because that's completely different, like a really close death in the family.
Yes.
But anyone
absolutely.
who's been through a breakup, like a very serious breakup, it's hard to pick up the pieces afterwards. But like, you realize at a certain point, time doesn't stop. You have to keep going, because time will not stop for you or for anyone else. And so when you come to terms with that, you just start taking it a second by second, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, until you're like, all right, this thing wounded me. This thing affected me so concretely, but maybe there is something around the corner that will be better. The lesser lesson to take from this is that if you, in order to make something really compelling in your storyline, in your movie, have a big set piece moment in the middle of it that people will remember, because that will keep people's attention and keep it moving.
Do you think they should have done this in episode 8 or episode 7?
No.
And not save it for...
I don't know. I don't know.
This was good.
The problem is, I just think that the season was written weird. And I want to kind of jump, like, this goes hand in hand with episode 10.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Because
let's jump to 10.
Because, like, certain things happen in each episode, and we've discussed it this whole podcast, that it would almost be better if they had, more self-containment in the episodes. Like, here's an example. You move all of the Jon Snow stuff to either the episode 10 or episode 9. Probably keep it in episode 9 because you have the betrayal. You move all of the Daenerys stuff to episode 10. And you break it up with the Tyrion stuff, and you just have those two storylines going. Because you would start with all of the Daenerys stuff, maybe intercut a little bit of the Tyrion stuff to break up the flow. Then you focus on the Tyrion stuff, which was fantastic. And then you end with powerful moment of Daenerys conquering the city. With that said, so I like that they revealed that the Lannisters were in on it, and then they reveal it again on this episode. The thing that I found interesting, like, Walter Frey's performance is great. The thing I find interesting about Roose Bolton, okay, so a couple of things. One, the show should have done a better job establishing how little a threat the Freys were. Maybe it was just me, but like, and hindsight is 20/20. But if you really push forward how pathetic the Freys are, then when Robb goes in, he's not expecting to be attacked. And then when he is attacked, it catches everyone off guard. And then it gets you thinking in the audience, what the heck happened? They kind of reverse engineer that in this episode when Tyrion's talking to Tywin about it. Secondly, the thing with Roose Bolton is interesting because there's this, I love this concept of like you have to pick a horse in your race. And Roose tied himself to Robb for such a long time. And then he kind of makes this comment about like, oh, the pup never listened to my advice. And I was like, I guess not. But he was also winning. Like,
he was winning, and he was going to take Moat Cailin, which could never be taken from the south. But he had a genius plan to do it. It was a good plan. It would have worked. And then he would have gotten all of his father's friends from... No, the Reeds that were in the Neck and all those swamp people and the frog eaters. He would have gotten them all in his cause. He was going to be on a tear. He was going to hit his winning streak, Robb. He was definitely going to hit his winning streak.
In the book. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, right. Yeah, well...
There was so much hope.
Like, again, it feels so forced in the show. It feels so contrived for him to have to go back through there, to me. Maybe not to anyone else.
It was. No, it was. But it would have been better to reclaim the North. Like, that's...
So, Roose Bolton, he has to choose who he thinks will win. And it's like, if he had just... It's like Usagi Yojimbo. Like, General Toda, if he stuck with Mifune, then Mifune wins the war and Hikiji's dead. But Toda thought that it would be better to hitch his horse to someone else who you have no idea if they're going to win or not. I really kind of wish they brought back in the idea that they talked about in the first season. Like, if Tywin Lannister if money won wars, why isn't Tywin Lannister king? I love that idea. And it would have been a great way to pull it back in on this episode where Tywin is like, I don't need to have the crown to rule. And it's like, you know what, man? Like, okay. I think that element is much more compelling. But like this idea that like Roose Bolton was seduced by Tywin into thinking that Robb couldn't win is like, you moron. If you had just stuck with him, you could have avoided this. Now, again, Roose Bolton, maybe not a great guy. I don't know. I kind of know, but I don't know. So it makes it all the more...
His son's sure not.
It makes it all the more, like... I guess tragic, or I think ironic, because it's like Robb probably could win and get independence for the North, but the one of the major pieces he needed got cold feet and abandoned it. And now we want vengeance because of one freaking dummy. So now we really want vengeance. So I love that. And like we want vengeance against the phrase.
It's very like mafioso, right? It's so mafia. Like, oh man, that family screwed us. Now we're gonna go back and we're gonna pay back with interest. It's like that's what the feeling is. The only problem is that the army that was gonna do it isn't there anymore. Like you can't do it. Like Michael Corleone isn't coming back from Italy to take them down. Like he's not, because Michael Corleone was the one that died. Like it was. So you're also wondering, like, how is this like gonna happen? And
I'm just more frustrated than anything. Like in a good way. I'm more frustrated than anything because it's like it comes back to it for me. Like it would have almost been even better if, like, as Robb's dying, he's like, he's just like, you traitor. We could have done great things together. We were an inch away. And then Roose is just haunted the rest of his life with like, did I really make the right decision? Did I make the right decision? I don't know.
No, you did not. No, you did not. That reminds me. Everybody kept talking about the Red Wedding. So immediately I thought, oh, well, it's the Lannisters. And they had been teasing Joffrey's wedding to Margarine. No, Margarine Tyrell got.
No.
They were been teasing
MTG.
they've been teasing this wedding for them like the whole season. So I thought, oh, Red Wedding. Oh, well, what's the Lannisters' color? Red. Oh, it's this Red Wedding. And everybody talked about it. And they're like, oh my God. It was like, oh my God, so much stuff happened. I was like, oh my God, I bet you like Cersei died and like all these other people died at this like big red wedding just with the Lannister red and just crazy. Yeah. No, it was Robb. I couldn't believe it.
I think it's called the Red Wedding because of the blood.
Right. Yeah, no, I think Roose is he picked the wrong horse. But yeah, the wolf head on
Robb's body.
On Robb, that was really hard to watch. So also in this, also on the Wikipedia article, we now Arya's alive, which is really nice. Especially because of what I read in the book, where it's like the axe took her in the back of the head, like, oh my God, she's dead. But in the show, it's like, no, like
you pretty much know at the end of episode 9, you pretty much know she's still alive because the Hound carries her.
He just knocked her out.
So you kind of know.
Although to be fair, in real life, if you knock somebody out like that, no, you could do some like major damage to them, especially for like a growing young girl, like giving her a concussion. Okay, I digress. This is a television show. So yeah, in this episode, Arya she uses the iron coin, which is a callback to a scene from the books where she flips it on I can't remember the name of it, but it was way back in Clash of Kings where she flips it down, the guard goes down to pick it up, and that's when she kills him. That happened in Clash of Kings, but they brought it back for this episode, so that's really cool. Except that after that, Sandor comes up to her and says, "There are many coins in the world, and none of them should be used like that."
No, does he really?
And Arya turns up to Sandor and says, "I was only having a bit of fun, Sandor."
It's just a bit of fun. Oh, you're probably right. No, you're probably right, Sandor. Oh my God. Does he really say that? No coin should be used like that? Oh.
No. That was my Lord of the Rings.
Nice. Drop. I thought it was going to be a drop about how Robb got a bunch of arrows in his body.
No, John.
I'm sorry. You're right,
Robb.
John. Well, so did Robb. Robb got a bunch of bolts. No, he got a bunch of Roose
That's true, he did.
ins in his body.
He did.
So, yeah,
Not much more to say about Arya, though.
I don't have any more to say about Arya either. I did like that scene, and she chose her words very wisely. That the first is that the first person you killed? And she's like, it's the first man I killed. No, the pointy end.
Oh, technicalities.
Boom.
Oh.
Did you notice that?
The technicality? Yeah. Oh, of course I did, but I was just laughing at you waving your arms in the air.
I like that scene. I like the developing camaraderie between Sandor. I should really learn his name. Sandor and...
No. The Hound. Yeah, it seems like the Hound is... he's kind of respecting and feels quite this bond between the Arya girls.
The Stark girls.
The Stark girls.
He is the
cool.
Stark Kid Roundup. Stark Kid Roundup.
Oh.
There's still
one less to do.
There's still 4 of them though. There's still okay.
There's still 4. I mean, man, Caitlyn was productive. I'm sorry, Catelyn was productive.
I see you've been very productive. No, lots of Fellowship of the Ring references today.
Oh, it was super nice. That middle finger wasn't in these last 2 episodes. That was really nice. Like, right? Because he's on the ship. He's gone. He's gone.
God, I hope out of the show forever, even though I know that's not the case.
No,
he's gonna drag his freaking pointy mustache. Anyway, that ties directly with Winterfell because Roose Bolton is talking about Ramsay Snow, who puts down a plate with a very phallic-looking sausage that he starts eating in front of.
So, yes,
in front of Theon.
Yeah, Theon doesn't have his manhood anymore. I just read like a little line in Dance with Dragons where he says, "Oh, I'm only missing, a bunch of toes and 3 fingers. I still got 7 fingers. I'm missing that other thing too, but And I was like, oh my god, I know what that is. But the show totally spoiled it.
Yeah, it's a good thing you're reading it so quickly, because good lord, they spend so much time, and like especially the ending in the Iron Isles, like does that happen in the show or in the books?
If it does, I hadn't read it. But so far, it seems like that is not a scene in the books. Like, it appears that this does not happen.
All right. No, Yara is going to go and save her castrated brother. God, I do remember in the book they have a line about, like, flaying stuff, and so I just assumed that, like, all of the skin was taken off of a certain part of his body, but yeah. How did you feel about the Theon storyline this season?
I hope my silence speaks volumes.
I think it does.
Although like the question that you posed, and my wife also posed it too, is just very good. Like, look at what Theon did. Does he deserve what's happening to him? Like, that is like a really, really good question. And it's super debatable. Maybe for another time. I think we already discussed it probably at length last time.
Yeah,
so.
I agree with you. I'm just like, the showrunners were like, and yeah, now you see the whole point of like why we did this.
Why we followed Theon's character.
Why? Why did we follow Theon's character? There's no...
Because that's Ramsay Snow. You didn't know that in the show.
Right. There's no... But, like, they didn't need that sort of... I don't know. I just feel like... maybe because I already knew who it was. Like, why? I'd still like, why? It's like all of that time spent... We spent a lot of really weird time with Theon just to reveal... The only thing that was revealed was that Roose Bolton's bastard is there. That's it. Right. That's it. We spent a lot of time. And
you should have been able to put it like... You should have been able to put it together so easily. The X and they hit and the banner for Bruce Bolton is the flayed man, which is the X. Like, you should have been able to put that together pretty quickly.
My question is, why? Like, that's it. It's like, oh yeah, we were building to this thing. Why? Why were you building to this? Like, why did you introduce so much horribleness? And the only thing I can think of is that they needed to retain his contract. They needed to pay him. So they had to write these scenes in. That's all I can think of.
Well, he's in book 5. He's in book 5 and he plays a role.
He does.
Yeah, and his name is, what's your name? Oh, it's Reek. It rhymes with cheek.
My name's Reek.
Reek rhymes with leek.
It rhymes with leek.
Reek.
Roy Dotrice reading A Dance of Dragons on those chapters. Like, I was so excited that you finally found that out, because listening to Roy Dotrice read them, one, it got me really depressed right before I had to go into work for 8 hours. But two,
I believe it.
It's so depressing. It's so depressing. But
oh, by the way, where I'm at right now in A Ball of Beasts, I have read over 800 pages. Again, this is between the two books. I've read over 800 pages, and I'm about 41% of the way through. And it's great. I like the reading of the jumping chapters and stuff. It's really it's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable.
Okay.
Sorry.
No.
Didn't mean to. Roy Dotrice.
Wait.
Reek rhymes with bleak.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I got way Okay, never mind. Okay. Oh my god. I can't go down this rabbit hole right in the middle of a podcast. Read it, like, seeing all these different things. Okay, we're just gonna watch the show and be like and enjoy it. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, we find out. Yeah, Theon is finally named Reek, and we devoted a lot of time to this storyline. And I'm still asking, like,
Reek.
This is one of the problems when you're like, the big thing when you're doing this is like to reveal a character name. It's like, this is why you need to have a little bit more, like, you have to have some sort of better substance to the story of why you're telling it.
They tried. They did the whole, like, oh, he escaped, and like, oh, but Ned Stark really was like a father to me. And then
oh, okay. And then he just gets tortured for 3 episodes, including one written by George R.R. Martin where he loses his ding dong.
Ugh.
I did think it was funny, like, for comedic purposes, him eating a giant pork sausage made me laugh. It shouldn't have, but it made me laugh.
That was good.
It was so gross, but so perfect.
But Balon's reaction to his son of like, well, he's not a man anymore. I was like, yep, perfectly, 100% in character. 100% true to character. That is exactly what Balon would have done. Exactly.
Did you like that scene? I did too. I really liked it.
I really did. I really appreciated that scene. That was a really well done scene. Although I'm really sad that at the end of this season something didn't happen to poor Balon.
Maybe they're saving it for next season.
They are. 100%.
I like Yara. So I like, in the limited time I've seen of her, I like her. And I love her motivation of like, I'm going to go rescue him. It still seems really wonky. Like her plan to rescue him seems very much like, this doesn't seem like it would work at all. So you telling me that scene, you have not crossed a scene like that in the books, makes me think that probably a show thing, because her plan, I'm gonna get some great sailors, I'm gonna board the boat, we're gonna go down there, and I'm gonna rescue my brother.
Yeah, this is actually super frustrating to me, because I just looked at the map. It's called geography. If they thought Winterfell was in the middle of the continent, the Dreadfort is on the other side of the continent from the Iron Isles. So I don't know how she's going to get there through ship from the Iron Isles, because the Iron Isles is in the kind of the middle of Westeros on the west side. The Dreadfort is on the eastern side. So you either have to go south, like you can't go north because that's where, the wall is and everything. So you got to go south, and then you got to go all the way around Dorne, and then you got to go through Slaver's Bay and all that section of the map, and then you can finally arrive there. Like, it's just, no, you're not going to... Like,
how would you do that?
I think the only way would be to go overland, but...
That would be my assumption is, you... Like, from the Iron Isles, I have a map up. From the Iron Isles, you go, you sail to Blazewater Bay. You take the river up to Torrens Square, and then from there, walk.
You gotta march.
To the Dreadfort.
You gotta march. And it was already hard enough for her to get to Winterfell. How in the world is she gonna get all the way to the Dreadfort?
Yeah, because you can't go north.
No, you can't. You just can't go north. Like, nobody does. It's just not a thing. Yeah, it's... it's... Okay, here's what it is, though. It's noble. It's like, yes, I'm going to go after my brother. And I think that the character in the book is different than the character on the show. Because the character in the book would be like, well... sure, I love my brother, but I wasn't around him for like 10 years. And then as soon as I was, he was trying to hit on me, and like, I just not really respect him at all. Like, it's just, the show has a different character. That's all I'm going to say, is that Yara is a different character than Asha. Asha is the one in the book. Yara is the one in the show. Different character in the show. But
how many Asha chapters have you read?
She's been in some of the Greyjoy chapters, which it takes forever to get through the Greyjoy chapters because I just don't care. I don't care at all about those chapters, even though I know that Reek is Theon. I didn't care about the Theon chapters. I didn't care that he grabbed Winterfell. I didn't care about that at all.
It's going to be getting towards the end is going to be a slog. I won't say anything. You know what? You've said some stuff on the book, so I'll say something. I actually liked the Asha chapters. One of my favorite quotes about post-coitus comes from it, where anyway, you'll get there.
That's in dance.
Outside. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly resolve like. Well, actually, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go next?
Let's go to the north, because there's only like one scene with Jon. Isn't that like where he like rides up to the Castle Black and like falls off his horse?
No, he and Ygritte talk, and then she pelts him with arrows. I thought that happened in this episode.
Oh, that's right. He rides away in the previous episode, and this is the episode where he gets shot. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
It's dumb because, like, the Wikipedia article does a bad job because it's like, oh, you know what? We didn't even talk about... Okay, I do have to address this quickly, and we'll address it here.
Please.
The whole thing with, like, Mackenzie Crooks being, like... Or what's his name? The guy who... The warg from the...
No, Oral.
The whole thing about him, like, forcing Jon to kill the guy, just... I hated it. I'm sure it happens in the book. I hated it. It was just so scummy. Like you're one of us now. You've got to do what we say. It's like, you know what, guys? Anyone can kill him. Just let someone else kill him. Who cares? Like, why are you guys getting so hung up? So I hated that.
Because they wanted to see if he was a true wildling or if he was still a crow.
But it also shows that they still don't trust him. So it's like, what's the point? I get it. I get why they did it. I don't have to like it though. You can't make me like it.
That's true. I won't make you like it. I won't make you like it. Maybe it was just like
an execution thing where I was just like, he doesn't. It's just because Oral wants Ygritte, and I was just like, this guy's annoying. Like, you know who you should kill? The guy who's not doing anything helpful. Oh wait, but you can't because you can see through the eagle's eyes.
oh, I know. Let's go ahead and develop this love triangle that isn't, and let's like forget all about poor Brandon Mira's love thing going on.
How about this?
Let's do that.
You have the other like really cool, quirky, redheaded dude. Like he's fun.
I love Tormund Giantsbane. He is awesome, and he and Jon are friends. In the books, they develop like a really good relationship. They're totally friends. He's awesome.
They had time. They could have done. Anyway.
I know. No, we know they had 10 hours.
Anyway, Ygritte and Jon have this very compelling scene. Ygritte chooses to shoot Jon.
It was
over and over.
Well done.
Jon runs away.
Man, well done.
Jon has no agency. Why do people like Jon Snow? He gets to...
Because in my mind, he is the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. That's my take.
He gets to Castle Black. Sam's there because Sam and Gilly made it after they ran into Bran, and they have that scene. They have a really long scene where like Sam just can't understand why Bran needs to go beyond the wall. I don't
yeah,
like it's weird because like if I break down what they spend time on, I'm like, it's such a waste of time. Why are you wasting my time with like a shot of Sam and Gilly leaving the fort?
It's a little bit different.
Okay, go ahead and tell me about the book so I can get over my like frustration with some of the directing choices in the show.
Bran, Jojen, Mira, and Hodor make it to the wall, and they make it to a fort, and Bran wants to go see Jon and wants to go to Castle Black, but Jojen says, no, can't do that. And they're like, oh my god, why are we listening to him? Fine, we'll keep listening to him. Which, by the way, once again, it's awesome on Bran's point. He's the one who's in charge, he's the prince, he's the decision maker, but he listens to the advisor and he does what the advisor says, even though it's against what he really wants to do. And he just, like, that's... I know that we talk about agency and it seems like he's going along with it, but he could speak up and he could force everybody to do the other thing, but he's not. He's going with it. And part of it is because Mira, the sister, goes with it too. And they kind of don't question him, and he questions why they don't question him. And it's very, like... It's very interesting.
Okay. Bran questions why they're not questioning him. Okay.
Right. Like, why aren't we, like, trying to argue some other way? Like, why do we just keep doing it this way? Well, they can't get through the wall. Like, there's no way through. Like, they can't get through. There's, like, this gate. They can't do it. But Jojen says this is where they have to be. And then that's when Sam appears. How did Sam get through the wall? How did he get through the wall with Gilly? But Bran and them, they couldn't get through. But Sam was able to get through on the other side. This is where it gets creepy. Yeah, creepy. So Sam takes the others down and he says, oh, well, you got to go this way. You got to follow me. And they trust him, right? Because they know he knows Jon. So they follow him down and they go through this long tunnel, and then there's this gate. And they can leave the gate. And it wasn't there before. Like, there was no way through it. But Sam says that only a member of the Night's Watch can say these words, and the gate will open, and you can have safe passage back and forth through the wall. And they're like, well, how did you know about it? He's like, well, if you go out there, there's somebody there waiting for you who showed us where this was.
What?
Yeah. And so they leave, and they run into who they call Cold Hands. And he's this guy who's completely clad in all these fur cloaks, and yeah, he's got these iron cold hands, and call him Cold Hands, and he rides a giant elk. So, yeah. But he can't go through the wall. So there's some, like, interesting thing going on there. I'm gonna stop there. Because I've got a lot of theories about it, and I think I'm right. I'm like 85% sure I'm right about my theories. So they're probably going to do something like it in the show or introduce him later, or maybe not. I'm not sure, but yeah, they run into somebody named Cold Hands, and it's just very again, it's magical and mystical and mysterious, and you just don't really know, right? Like it's so weird. But I was like super stoked that like, yeah, Sam, he did it. Because Sam and Gilly were completely lost. They were going to find their way back. They needed help.
That's true.
But yeah. No, I'm like 100% sure you're going to be introduced to this character in the next season. Because that would be... So, Bran's stuff in the next season would probably be from A Dance with Dragons.
Okay. Where to next?
Your reaction was great. What did you think about that when I said that?
That sounds so cool, and I can't wait. I want to know. I want to know what your theories are.
Yeah.
But
although knowing the show, they're going to spoil it right at the beginning. At the very beginning, you're going to be introduced to him. He's just going to be like, and he'll just spoil it. And so you're like, okay.
Who do you think it is? Do you think it's Benjen Stark?
I do.
That's that when you were.
Spoiler alert.
But how could he not pass through? He must no longer be a member of the Night's Watch. So.
I think he's dead.
He's reincarnated. I think it's the Lord of Light.
I do. No, not the Lord of Light. I think he's like a white, kind of like how Caitlyn came back to life.
Okay. Let's move on. Oh yeah, Sam gives him dragon glass as well.
Yeah, that's right. He doesn't do that in the books.
They send a bunch of ravens out, which will lead us. Let's talk about Dragonstone.
Let's do it. And by the way, Master Aemon, love the actor. So good. So good. Woo! Okay, let's do it. Let's go to Dragonstone.
So Stannis informs Davos of Robb. I love the actor who played as Davos. You know what I was thinking? I was trying to think of another actor who could play Stannis, and I was thinking of, for some reason, I was thinking about Dean Winter. And I was like, you know what? Because you need someone who's like...
He could.
What?
He could.
Because the way you describe him, it's like a hard man who's got like a bit of edge to him. So
And if you want to know Dean Winter, you just have to hear the word mayhem.
I feel like Dean Winter is one of those actors who's like, he should be in a bunch of stuff because he's so good, but he's not in anything.
He's so good.
All right, so they plan to sacrifice Gendry, and
yes,
I feel like there was. Oh, that's right. Davos was trying to read a book, and then he's reading the mail, and then he reads the note that Sam sent about the threat from the wall. He goes to talk to Stannis, and Stannis has a note that says Robb is dead. And kind of like, what are we all doing here? Why are we doing this?
It's all in code too. Like, oh, we caught a big fish and blah, blah, blah.
That's
like,
right.
As Mario would say, blah, 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 blah.
I love all of the scenes with... Okay, now I remember. That's the scene where Davos talks to Gendry, and he's like... I love that scene. I forgot about it, but I was like, I know there was a really good, compelling scene with Davos in it where he's talking about how
young Christian Bale,
how he lost like his knuckles and stuff. And so he builds a rapport with Gendry, finds out that there's a problem in the north, talks to Stannis. Stannis is like, doesn't matter, we're still gonna kill Gendry because we need the power. Davos frees Gendry, but it feels like in a way where he frees Gendry in a way where it seems like Stannis would have caught him in the show, because it's like, here, you've never been in a boat. It's like, oh my god, this guy's gonna die. Davos, just go with him. That's what I was thinking.
He's got to be hand of the king. He can't. He's got to be hand of the king.
That's what I was thinking, but I feel like they're like, as an audience member, if I'm like, Davos, why aren't you going with him? Then they made a problem in establishing why he's so attached to Stannis. There's too much in this season of him hating the Red Woman and going against Stannis, because he goes against Stannis the entire season, and they kind of, I feel like they didn't do a good enough job of establishing this feeling of like he can't leave. But anyway, he sends Gendry off, and then they like awkwardly move the neck, like they have a couple of scenes in between, and then he's like, "Yep, I let Gendry go," and Stannis is like, "Well, now you'll be put to death," and he's like, "Oh, nope, you're gonna want me to live," and like they have this like, I feel like the conversation tries to be more clever than it actually is, because it just kind of goes around in circles, but ultimately Melisandre like the Red Woman, I'm just gonna call her, changes her mind and is like, "Nope, you're gonna need him. This stuff changes everything." I guess after she read the note, she put it in the fire, and the fire told her what to do. Is my understanding. Otherwise, it just seems like she doesn't have a connection to the Lord of Light, and she's just kind of doing things like of her own accord.
No, Lord.
Oh, they refuse to call him that in the show because the show doesn't like fantasy. That's another weird thing. It's like, oh, we're gonna make a show about fantasy and take out all the fantasy elements. Edgy.
Right. Well, that's another thing too that I feel like the show doesn't touch upon at all, actually. So Tyrion is very much a disbeliever. He's like, no, all this stuff, like all this like magic and things, no, it's all explainable. Of course. Like, no, it's not magic. Like, no magic. And I'm sure he's going to be wrong later. Looking forward to it. But yeah, there's clearly magic in the world. It's a fantasy world. There's magic in there. Like it doesn't show up all the time, but it's there, and it's there in its own unique way, which is really cool.
It's like the Norsemen. I keep calling it the Norsemen. It's like the Northmen. All right, so they decide to. I do like the Davos scenes. I like Davos. I wish they had him in more. And they were like, okay, we need to go north and find out what the heck's going on. Which, of course,
the real battle's happening.
The Lord of Light is all about fire. And up in the north, there's these evil zombies made of ice.
It's called The Song of Ice and Fire.
Man, these thematic elements of fire and ice, way to incorporate it into the title of your show called Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Do you have anything to comment on in Dragonstone? Is it similar to the book, different than the book? Because Gendry's not a character in the book, is he?
No. Gendry's a character, but he's hanging out with Beric Dondarrion, and I think he is. I think that's where I last remember him. But it's Edric Stone is this one, and he gets Edric Stone out, but he uses the help of pirates and Salador San to get him out.
Nice to see Salador San come back into the show. I guess they couldn't afford him for the episode. But otherwise...
Well, you know who else comes back? Jarozan Daxos. He comes back. In Dance with Dragons, he's in there for so far a scene. But still, he was there. And no, he's dead in the show. He got locked in the vault with Doria at the end of season 2. Oh, and I gotta mention, because I do in every podcast, speaking of, and we might as well run on over to Slaver's Bay, aka
Let's
Young
do it
Kai.
for the one freaking scene in the whole episode.
Ricardo lives! No, he doesn't in the show, but Ricardo lives! Shout out Ricardo.
A song for Ricardo lives. Okay.
Right?
Great scene. Misha.
Great scene.
It's fine.
Misa.
It's a good scene to end on until they have the super janky VFX of like the camera pulling out on the giant circle, and then like the poorly By the way, all of the dire wolf composites are horrible. Like the dire wolves look awful in the scenes. They look so fake. It's like they were shot on a different frame rate. They're so blurry. And then the dragons, like that final shot, like I know that was probably their money shot.
That was their budget.
What?
That was their budget.
Shot looked awful. Like every time I see it, I'm just like, this is terrible. That pull out of like it focuses on her and it pulls out. It's just so anticlimactic. Like it's nice, and it ends the season on hope. But you know what would have been but it also feels kind of like a waste of time because we haven't been following Daenerys.
Yeah, they could have had
They should have moved all of the.
They could have had that bat. Yeah.
They should have moved all of the Daenerys stuff to this episode, and made it form around her.
Yes.
And the only other story we have left to talk about, which I'd love to talk about, but do you have anything else to say outside of Yunkai?
No.
Misha.
Misa.
So the stuff with King's Landing, and here's the weird thing. They stack all of the King's Landing stuff, which is arguably the best stuff to me. They stack it all at the beginning. What the heck?
But they end with Misa, which they named the episode after.
Yeah! You named the episode after a 3-minute scene. Why? Because book reports are for third graders.
8th graders.
Oh, God. All right. I'm trying to think of everything that happened, because the thing that sticks out is
Joffrey wanted to be on the council meeting.
Yes, that's right.
Right?
And Joffrey's parading it around, and he's like, oh, that was great. He's parading it around, and he's like, I'm going to ask for Robb Stark's head, and then I'm going to serve it to Sansa during my wedding. And I was like, this guy.
That's what he would say in the books.
Yeah, no, it's...
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, it's great. He's so annoying. I understand, he's terrifying.
The king is tired.
I understand he's supposed to be terrifying, but, I also find him just really annoying. Is that bad? I find him more annoying than terrifying, because if you take all of his toys away, then he's not scary.
No, and he's not.
I would also like it for, because, Tywin is I am in control of everything. And so I'm hoping that Joffrey does something that goes against Tywin that Tywin can't hit Control Z on. That's the thing that I'm very much, and I don't know if it happens, maybe it does, but that's the thing. Oh, okay. So, cause I know that I think you told me that Tyrion is framed for a certain.
We'll tackle that later.
I'm
sure.
hypothesizing, but it seems like that's the last thing to fall, because Tywin has such a big ego and Joffrey has such a big ego that they have to come to a head at some point. There has to be something that drives the two to the breaking point, because that's what happened with that's why it was so shocking when it happened in book 1 when he was just off with his head, is because it was too. It's Cersei never thought she could be betrayed by Joffrey, and then Joffrey is nope, I'm my own evil demon creature. So I'm excited for that, and I think that's what keeps me engaged in the show is okay, these moments I want to see. Although I think if I read the book and then saw the show, I would be disappointed by it not measuring up to what I have in mind. So I wonder if you're going through any of that. So yeah, Tyrion stands up for Sansa, and then Tyrion talks to Tywin in probably that's another great conversation. I'm gonna stop the whole I wish that George had written it, because if George R.R. Martin had written it, it would be better, but because they're so meat and potato. The dialogue is just so it's so straightforward for the most part. It's not like, the actors carry it, and it's not bad what they're saying.
Yes,
but it is also very much like they're not the best writers on the show. All right, there you go. That's my thing. Anyway,
right? No, they're not. They're not. We can count 3 other writers that are better, but they want to write most of the episodes, and
HBO just kept giving them money.
Well, yeah, I know. I think that their plotting is probably okay, but then their writing, I don't know. I feel like I think that they want the credit.
Yeah, I think they do. One thing that was interesting is Tyrion is like, you've never. Oh, so the whole idea of like Tywin, like, I get they're like Tywin's utilitarian because he's like out to make it better. One, the whole idea of like, I think, you know, Tyrion has a bunch of respect for the Starks, contrasted with Tywin, who has no honor at all. I think Tywin saw that he was losing the war and did everything he thought he could in order to make sure, not that the realm is better, and not even that his family is in a better position, but I think he just did everything so that he could win and say, I won. Because that's who I think he is. Especially in the show, I think that's who he is. And if that's who he is, then they do a great job. And obviously, like, everyone praises Charles Dance's acting, and, like, I agree. He's fantastic as the villain. I love that.
Super good.
I love that Tyrion just calls him out and is like, you don't do anything for the family. You just do everything for yourself. Like, you've done everything for yourself. And he's like, I saved you, and that was just doing something for the family. If it were up to me, I'd just let you drown. And I think it would be great if, like, we found out later on that, like, and of course you know that if I'm right or wrong, but, like, it would be even more poignant if, like, because I know some of the stuff that you've told me from the future, if, like, Jaime went over and actually saved Tyrion instead of, like, Tywin, like, deciding not to do it. I think that would be, like, the cherry on top of, like, Tywin is just an irredeemable POS. And he already pretty much is, which I think is kind of an error in the second season when he's, like, being humanized with his interactions with Arya. Like, I don't necessarily want to be rooting for to find this guy interesting. You know, like, I want to just be mad. Like, maybe you can't tell who the heroes always are in the books. Although I always kind of felt like I could. But maybe you can't always tell who the heroes are. But you can generally tell if there's, like, a despicable villain. Like, they're pretty despicable.
Ramsay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was also interesting because like, I knew that Joffrey was a bad guy in book 1, and then I heard about all of these other characters who were bad guys, and I was like, oh, I wonder if George, like, got rid of one bad guy, and he's like, oh, I gotta create another one. And it's like, no, he's actually, like, layering all of these, like a to-do list of really, terrible bad guys, and, like, now we have to find a way to, like, okay, we got to take out one bad guy, got to take out another bad guy, like, work our way through all the bad guys, like, and then it's like every time you do one, as Tyrion says, every time we eliminate one enemy, 2 more come up in their place, which is also great. Like, I loved that too, like, that whole concept of, like, that this
like fallout and consequences.
Like is it really, like, is war really worth it? Is fighting battles really worth it? And it's like, guess what? The answer is no. This is an anti-war fantasy.
Like the kind of like in Breaking Bad or like other shows where, like, this big event happens and then all of a sudden you have all these different things that spiral out of it. Like that, I find that to be very interesting too, and how it all kind of, well, as I'm reading, right, I'm like, okay, well, I'm hoping that all these little threads that are expanding outwards
pay off.
I gotta hope that they all weave together into, like, one big thick strand at the end where you're like, all right, there it is, all very satisfying. And you just kind of gotta hope. And at least for these books, you don't know because the story's not over yet. One, of course, pontificates if it ever will be. Some point it will be, I'm sure. But, we're all hoping that's what's, we're going to get that payoff. And, we'll see. But I agree, though. The whole like spiraling storylines kind of threading out. It's very interesting. It's very well done. And the unforeseen consequences, very interesting.
I forgot.
Extremely complicated.
I did forget that Tywin is like, Tyrion, you have to impregnate Sansa for the good of the family. And then Tyrion and Cersei have a great conversation about, like, when it's your children, you'll love them. It's a great scene, great acting. And then Varys talks to Shay.
Doesn't Tyrion and Sansa have a scene together too, where they're walking and they're kind of talking and they're kind of
That's
getting
right.
along?
Yeah, because that's right. That was great. Because
and so out of character
for them to be together.
For Sansa, she's very boring around Tyrion. Yes, my lord. Okay, my lord. Whatever you say, my lord. What kind of music do you like? What kind of music do you like, my lord? Like, that's...
I like that they're like little buddies.
It's a good scene.
They're little buddies.
Yeah.
I can see why that's out of character. I wonder if they develop it in a different way. But I think also, like, as an audience member, I want the two of them to be friends.
Yes.
And allies.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you do.
So,
because they're both good people and they're both, in a way, protagonists. Even though they're kind of on opposite sides, they are both protagonists.
If things
like, one's a Stark and they're few and far between now.
And one loves the Stark family. God,
yeah.
I do want to dive back into Game of Thrones because I remember I was like, you'd read like 3 chapters of Stark children and then it's just like, Tyrion? What? Who is this guy?
Right, yeah.
Okay, Varys offers Shay a bunch of diamonds to go away because it's Toranaga. That's all I could think of. It's Toranaga. I wonder if this is how they're pushing, like, how they're going to try and get it to mimic the book. Like, if they're going to have that same outcome in the show as they do in the book. I wonder if this is like them trying to push it in that direction.
I don't know. I can see them doing something different.
What do you think they're going to do?
And I was going to say, I'll explain to you off.
Okay.
Off podcast. And we'll see. Because the way it's developing, the way it's going, I'm like, well, you could have a little bit different outcome here with this Shay versus the book's Shay.
Okay, we'll talk about it off.
I'll give you how I think the showrunners might do that later.
And then the last thing is Jaime comes back. We all thought he would be done after The Bear and the Maiden Fair, but nope, he came back.
He made it!
He's back in King's Landing.
He made it to King's Landing.
He gets...
and the best part is, nobody knows him. Nobody recognizes him, and he gets treated like a regular old peasant. Ha ha ha. That was great. Although, I would have enjoyed it if he commented on the smell. Oh, I didn't think it smelled so bad last time. Which, of course it did, because it's King's Landing. It smells terrible. King's Landing is a horribly dirty.
Did he do that in the book?
I don't know, but I feel like that's something that should be done. It's like, I just fit in the moment. I think
people just imagine that King's Landing smells good because it looks good. It looks pretty, so it smells pretty. I bet it smells a lot like Florence.
It looks really pretty in the Red Keep. In the Red Keep, it's pretty, and especially all those scenes with Margarine and Tyrell. God.
Margarine the flower.
Although that looks more like High Garden. I've never been to High Garden in the books yet, but the whole garden and the flowery stuff is like, oh man, that's really pretty.
He does get to see Cersei, to which I feel like Cersei would just be like, take a bath.
Remind me what happens in that scene. I
think
can't
he just
remember.
says Cersei, and it pans over to him, and then it pushes it on him, and then it ends. The scene ends.
He looks at his stump.
Yeah. Any of that happened differently in the books, or anything you want to comment on in the books?
That moment when it was like pretty much dead on to the books. It was very good. The Tywin Tyrion scene, and the best part was like, Tywin, like you got to get her with child. And he responds that, well, she just lost her brother and her mother. I don't think she'll be really in the mood for that.
Yeah.
And it's just like Tyrion having to break the news.
That's right.
Just,
I remember that scene in the show too, when he opens the door and she's just like pouring out tears, and I don't remember what he said or if he even said anything.
I don't think he did. I think he just left her. It was just so
powerful.
It's tough to be a Stark. It's tough to live there. I don't want to live there at all. My wife and I talk about it where we're like, okay, yeah, imagine that you're there. Like, would you want to be there? Like, well, would you want to be a king? No. There goes Renly. There goes Robb. No, you don't want to be a king. All right, well, do you want to be a knight? No, not really, because then you got to go like fight and terrible things happen to you. Oh, well, that's why you want to be a peasant, right? No, peasants get raped and put to the torch. And just, right, what do you want to be in Westeros? Yeah, here's the answer. You don't want to be there. No way. I would want to be in Braavos or the Summer Isles. That's where I'd want to be. Away from Westeros. Let me put it that way. I want to be away from Westeros.
The thing is, like, the thing that I find interesting is, like, the Starks are a hard family. Like, they're hard and cold as the winter. So if anyone was going to be able to weather all of the stuff that's going on, I feel like it would be them. Which I'm sure is why they were chosen as the main points of view that are like the main catalysts. And in addition, like you said about, it doesn't follow the kings in it.
None of the kings are POVs. That's true.
Yeah, it doesn't follow the king's POVs. It's just also interesting. Like, do you have anything else to say about this episode, or can we move on to a couple of great?
I don't.
We actually summarize that.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to talk about like recap and then the book and the show and just kind of where we're at, and I think that'd be pretty cool to do right now.
I have like all of these notes here, and a lot of them I've already touched on. Jon Snow is passive. Cold hands, we already talked about the theory. Dany as Alexander the Conqueror's one last thing. But from a critical perspective, one of the interesting things is like when I'm going back over and looking over the Wikipedia critical response synopsis, it's incredible how many of the episodes are like everyone agrees that the show is good, which I can't really disagree with. The show is good. It's also interesting how many of the sort of like summary of the consensus is this episode pushed the story forward. This episode was just used to push the story forward. This episode was used to push the story forward. And then it's just like, okay, well then why, like, what are we pushing the story forward towards? Like, so I guess this is the biggest issue I have with their whole like book report. Themes are for 8th grade or for book reports or for 8th grade book reports. Like, there are so many episodes that are just samey then. It's like every episode bleeds together. The significance of each episode is undermined by the fact that you don't have it building. The only reason people think The Reigns of Castamere is an interesting episode is because it has a huge event, but the event takes place through the entire episode, which is smart.
Right.
Blackwater, great because it's like a self-contained episode. Things happen throughout the entire episode.
Mm-hmm.
The Bear and the Maiden Fair starts and ends mini stories, like little mini sections of each story that it sets up.
But each of those ones
the one where Jamie gets his hand cut off. Well, no, the one after that, the one that your favorite episode of possibly the season.
Yes.
Had a lot of beginning and ending of these things, and it's almost like they're stumbling into these things by almost on accident. So like the whole idea of like the betrayal and everything, it's like DB Weiss and David Benioff stumbled into it on accident. They didn't even realize that it was about how betrayals can be both good and bad, and the fact that like it's just a connecting tissue. It's almost like an accident that they stumbled into. So like,
I felt like it was an accident. I agree.
Because if,
I don't think that's what they intended.
I think if they realized it, they would have moved the Danny stuff out and put it in a different episode, or they would have had.
Well, it's also nice to have the sideways stuff, like not like sideways stuff, but more like sort of like all this betrayal stuff is building, and then like, oh yeah, we got this over here too, kind of to lighten it up.
Well, you could start putting like, because it's already connected with Bran, and like Bran's already connected in that episode, so maybe you end the episode like with Bran stumbling into Sam. Well, no, because you need Sam in the last part to sort of connect the Davos stuff. So like, yeah, I think you could have probably just run it with Jon and the Reigns of Castamere. I don't know if you needed a third storyline, and then push the Daenerys. What was the other? Maybe push the Bran stuff because Bran's barely in it. Maybe you push that and you tease the ending with Sam getting there.
No. You know what you do is you put in the Davos freeing Gendry because he betrays his king.
You could put that in there too, yeah. Davos betrays Gendry, but then you're running into timeline problems because Davos betrays Gendry because Sam sends out the letters. The Ravens.
Good point. Those are fast Ravens.
Yeah. I have no idea of the logic of this place according to the show. So that's another issue I have with the show. Like a huge issue is the time change.
Or you know what? Don't have him read the letters. Just have Melisandre say, "Oh yeah, we gotta take him and we gotta burn him and stuff," and don't have the letter come in the final episode where Melisandre says, "We're going north." Like have Davos betray him and then be arrested, and then the last episode, that's when Melisandre is like, "No, you need the Onion Knight, and we're gonna go to the wall."
Maybe, but then you run into a problem. You run into the Daenerys problem, where you have just one scene in this episode with Davos and Stannis. And like, I think my goal, like if I redid the show, it would be to, one, connect the episodes thematically somehow, and two, like work to make the episode work in the way of like pushing the story forward, but also connecting all of the material thematically, and then also limit the amount of stories that don't start and finish per episode, which I think that's the main issue. And again, maybe it was seen as like refreshing because this predates streaming TV series and binge watching, although people would buy the series and then binge watch it. Well, like they buy it on DVD.
Was HBO On Demand around
what?
then? Was HBO On Demand
I think
available
so, but
then?
also they would come out with the Blu-rays and the DVDs, so you'd buy the DVD and watch every episode in a row.
So when Amazon launched The Boys season 2, they would only release an episode like every Wednesday.
A lot of streaming. So Netflix pioneered the idea of dumping the entire season at one time. So HBO is still what they do. So HBO made it a priority to get all of the episodes completed before they would release the first episode. So they'd have every single episode done and then start showing it one episode a week. Netflix would shoot every single episode, then dump all of the episodes online at one time for people to watch, and that's when binge watching became a thing. And then, which like the inherent problem with that is you could watch the first episode, immediately watch the last episode, and then be like, okay, cool. That was interesting, but
no, you know what? HBO On Demand was around back then. So in a way, like they did have streaming, so you could watch the episodes whenever you would want, and then wait for the new one to come out. So they were kind of in the streaming.
It was getting there.
The streaming frontier.
But again, like you would still like in HBO, you'd wait week to week. Now a lot of platforms have gone back to the week to week. They would release 2 episodes. Disney really started doing this with like WandaVision and The Mandalorian because it builds. I think I actually do agree with this. It builds more anticipation waiting a week to watch the next episode, because then all of the, like, especially with the way that the internet works, instead of like with a newspaper where they'll maybe post one article or like maybe one article a day, with the internet, anytime a new episode comes out, you don't get like one article a day. You get like 8. And then the next day you get 8 more that speculate on the speculation, and then 8 more trying to predict what's going on. So you like, to the point where like the shows, if they're active and engaging, you're getting a lot of like you're getting a lot of press coverage. Like that's why The Mandalorian was huge. That's what makes, and then like you're watching The Boys week to week and you're like, oh my God, let me sit and process the entire episode. Maybe go back and rewatch the first couple to see how they build. And then the next one comes out. Yes. And that's one of the things we're running into is like, maybe we're not allowing enough time to process as we're watching each episode. Maybe if we watched it like week to week like everyone else was, the time gaps would feel better, especially between seasons. Like, oh, it feels like something significant is happening. But I feel like you should also account for that in your show and be able to build like a way of telling how much time has passed. And again, it may be like the Lord of the Rings thing, where the Lord of the Rings movies take place a lot faster than the Lord of the Rings books, because they just have to keep the pace going faster.
Now, that's an interesting comparison, because the Lord of the Rings, yeah, there's a lot there. Like, there's a lot of material. There's a lot of stuff. They had to go through the books, and basically, I feel like they used pens and highlighters and all the digital tools that they could at the time to just kind of parse it down, figure out what storylines did what, and which ones they could cut, which ones they could keep, which ones they could do this or that, and you know, that's how the special editions, but even the special editions don't have everything in it. And then they change certain things, and they introduce new scenes like the Faramir-Boromir thing. I've never read Lord of the Rings, but I imagine that's kind of a scene added by the movies. Whole
Faramir showing his quality is added by the movies, yeah, which is one of my favorite scenes.
And it's a great scene, yeah. And you just don't get the feeling that the showrunners for this show have that kind of like passion for it. It's almost like they want to be. It's almost like they want to be the bad boys of tech, but for television. You know, like the move forward and break things kind of, you know, the Facebook mantra. And they're kind of like the same thing, like, oh, well, we're going to do this. And
so my question is, like, have I poisoned the show too much for you? Have I poisoned your opinion of the showrunners too much? Is it, like, a lot of this stuff feels like stuff that, like, I believe. But I also worry that maybe my constant harping on how I feel like they stumbled into success, like, which I can kind of justify as, like, to me, Game of Thrones seemed like Rome did really well and they needed a follow-up, and this was the closest thing they could get. HBO did not like the first way they wrote the episode, so they told them to do it again because they wanted to dig in to this concept of, like, a fantasy series but gritty realism like Rome. And so they just got to fail upwards. But I wonder if my interpretation of them has biased your opinion too much against them. What do you think?
Well, I thought that the Reigns of Castamere was the best episode this season.
Okay, so it supplanted the other one, or it usurped the other one?
It did. It did, okay. Definitely. There's a lot of things that I really liked. But you didn't, like, sour them on me. They kind of do that themselves. With the inside the episodes, and to a stronger extent, the storylines that they're following, the storylines that they're cutting, like the Brandon Mirror thing. It's like, oh, you know, like whatever, but it would have added such a little bit of lightness to the lack of having Caitlyn being around her father who's losing his mind. And of course you've got Sansa, who was supposed to be working with Sir Dantos and trying to leave King's Landing, but you weren't sure if she could trust him or not. And is this a real thing? Can I really get out of this horrible place I'm in? I felt like it was very much like a mirror, like a very good analogy with the like domestic abuse, where it's like, you know that like Joffrey's beating you and you're getting beat on a regular basis, but this is almost too good to be true. Should I trust it? You know, is this really a way out? And is it going to be there in time, or am I going to be marrying Joffrey or something? And then, you know, of course, at the end of season 2, right, she's all super happy, and then in season 3, she has to marry Tyrion, who's now Lord of Winterfell. Right. But then you have Roose Bolton being Warden of the North. So it's just, you know, very complex, very complicated. I like some of the choices that they make, but I feel like they should try to consolidate some of the other stories. Make something simpler, and listen to George R. R. Martin. You know, I'm sure he's got some stories in there that, like, he's like, no, you don't really need this part.
I wonder how much he does in the writing room.
Like, there's a whole thing in there where I'm like, okay, so like I saw what happens in this area. That's really important. You got to keep that there. But then, like, when when Arya and the Hound are traveling, and the rains are horrible, the torrential, they can't cross a river, so they have to hire people to do it. And like yeah, that's okay to cut. You know, there's you can see things that are like, yeah, that's probably not going to go anywhere. You don't really need that there. But on the other hand, I don't know, there's some stuff that's pretty important. I know that was like the most yes or no, most BS answer, most like words coming out, but like
it's a
nothing.
Difficult question. Like it's weird. Like I understand how important the Reigns of Castamere was, but it's definitely not my favorite episode of the show. Blackwater is still my favorite. Maybe because I spent so much time in that, and we talked about that episode for an hour. Now we did talk about the Reigns for about an hour and a half. So
we did,
but like, I don't know. I think I don't know. It's also easy for us to look because like they have like reading that interview. Did that just like kind of sour the show for you a little bit? That article I linked back to you. It came out right before this season was going to come out.
I feel that it's very divisive. Like, you're either going to be totally on board, like, yeah, I'm a Benioff bro, or you're gonna be like, no. I feel like the way that the showrunners talk about the show and this or this, feel like, you know, the whole like 8th grade book report he sneered. I feel like in that moment, it's very divisive. You're either kind of with him and you're into his vision and his attitude for everything, or you're not. And unfortunately, you don't have a choice. It's the show. Yeah. You don't you can't watch somebody else's vision of the show. That's it. But that was kind of the feeling that I got, and you just kind of have to hope that they're gonna do it justice. And maybe they know something that the rest of us don't for how the storyline's supposed to go. So
I mean,
yeah,
foreshadowing. I feel like if
Ooh.
they did, then they made a lot of weird choices to get there. Like
the Roz stuff.
Like the Roz stuff was just so depressing. But also, if you know where this if you pitch the show to George R.R. Martin and you answer his one question correctly, and he tells you how he's planning on ending the entire series, and you know that you're going to have to go in your own direction after you run out of material for Dance of Dragons, it's weird that you don't reverse engineer based off of how it's supposed to end to get to that ending in a good way. And you can only understand and know what I'm saying when we watch the final season. That's the only way you're going to be able to say oh, Matt, interesting, because there's stuff that we talk about we can't really comment on, and I'm not going to remember by the time we get to season 8. But there's stuff that we've already said that I think wholeheartedly was teased and not executed. It was teased in the novels and will be nicely executed. There's other things which are not even present at all in the show, completely ignored and completely inconsequential and not even seen. So I will also say that this article is the Winter is Here by Andy Greenwald is the biggest POS I've ever read in my life. Reading it, I wanted to scream and puncture his eyes and cut off his fingers so that he never writes another piece of trash again. Because it's just it's almost as he's writing it, everything that we kind of talk about.
You want to give him a Ramsey?
Oh, God.
You want to give him a
No,
Ramsey?
not that bad. No one.
Oh, okay.
No one deserves that.
No one deserves that.
Which is that's kind of I think that's interesting because it's it's incredible to create a character that people will be a little bit over the edge when they say certain things about this thing, and you're just oh Ramsay Snow will do, and you're ooh, I really do need to temper what I'm saying because it's a good cautionary tale. You think what you did is bad?
Yeah.
Do you think it deserves what Theon is going through? Let's compare. Imagine anything bad you did, the most horrible thing you did. This is your punishment. Do you think it's, it's a good litmus test anyway. But just...
You already know where I stand on that.
Yeah. He killed innocent children. But like I said, it's... The piece is really bad because it has a bunch of really lame surface level name drops and references to the show. And then...
Oh, which, by the way, it was Ramsay that actually killed the kids in the books. So, yeah. Right. Ramsay is yeah.
There's a lot of epitomes.
If an episode is really bad, we'll just call it a Ramsay.
There's a lot of all of these little things where it's just George R. R. Martin's really good at creating these characters that are the epitome of evil.
And he gives them character too. Vargo Hoat, he slobbers and he has this crazy lisp. In a way, it's kind of... It made me laugh when I read it. Oh my gosh, they got so much character. But in the show, everything's just really dark. And that is, I think, what I would like to kind of point out is they are going to run out of material, right? They're only going to go to Dance with Dragons. And then Then they get to, Winds of Winter, the forthcoming books, which aren't out yet. And I don't think it made me sour to it. I think you've just made me aware about some of their shortcomings. And yeah, I would say that one of their big shortcomings is character development.
Yeah.
And they're not really hitting on... they're trying to tell, the main overarching story. And they kind of forget that stories are about characters.
And themes.
Themes come later. They're only good for book reports.
They are only good for book reports. One of my favorite things about this article, I have it up now, is Benioff and Weiss can focus on more intricate challenges of adaptation, pacing, dialogue, and the subtle awareness of when to add scenes and when to take them away. I hate it. Thank you. Thank you, this article. I hate it.
For the first season, I felt like they did a pretty good job, but that's because they also followed the material pretty close. So,
again, it's all about enhancing the material and not just hey, you remember what happened to Jon Snow's hand in season 1? No.
I remember.
Nope. The show doesn't.
No, you don't.
The show
They
doesn't.
They could do a 2-second shot of him with the hand just flexing his hand.
Yeah.
And now he's got a leg injury because he's got an arrow in his leg. He has that in the books. He walks with a limp for a long time and on a crutch and stuff. And it's hard for him to move around.
I'll pair it, and then we should start wrapping up. I mean, I'll let you have the last word on everything. But one of the things that's interesting is there's another show that came out kind of around this time, a little bit after, called True Detective, and the first season universally loved. And what's interesting is I think if you look at because the second and third season of True Detective are bad. Well, not bad, but there's a lot of problems. The writer got too full of himself, wrote a bunch of material that wasn't necessarily great. And one of the things they did in the first season was they got Cary Fukunaga, who did No Time to Die. And Fukunaga was we need to find ways to make the show cinematic. But also I think...
No time to die.
Time to die.
No.
But I also think he helped to temper some of the ego, and he helped to make it because he writes. He also is able to write his own material. So I think Cary Fukunaga was able to kind of rein in the things that weren't working and enhance the things that were, and also use his camera and use his direction to enhance the overall. Use elements of film to enhance the story. And there are really easy ways to do what you were saying about John flexing his hand with the wound. You could have John massaging his hand. You could put these details in, but that would require the directors to understand all of the material, read all of the material, and also have some of that stuff in the scripts. And so you want to have all of these things working on different levels. So maybe look, if themes are for book reports, then levels are for video games. But it would be nice if the show were operating, if the showrunners added in some more of this, textured world and stuff. Show more about the time elapsing as they're going on the road. Have the episodes have little self-contained stories to make you feel like you're not just, looking at the outline.
Show the scorched landscape from A Clash of Kings or season 2, where war is horrible. They put everything to the torch. Buildings were burned, places were abandoned, farmlands destroyed.
But they don't care about.
You show all this other scenery.
They don't care about the people. They don't care about the Clash of Kings. They don't care about a storm of swords. All they care about is that dang Game of Thrones. Your final thoughts, sir?
As we
close out season 3.
Oh, right. I was just thinking about, I think we talked about this before, but what's really cool about the books is that the POV of the characters. You can just have somebody go through and say, on this page is this character, on this page is that character, on this page is that character. And then you could have a team of writers. One writer takes all the Tyrion material. One writer takes all the Sansa material. One writer takes all the, and have parallel stories. And one writer on each of these things, or, a couple writers on each of them. And then they all kind of team up together in a way to kind of structure and put it together. It just seems logical because all the character POVs are separated and you can do that. And then that's when you can start looking at things going okay, well, let's see if we can add in scenes here or there. With the Lord of the Rings, you got a deep sense that the director, but let's be honest, there's no way Peter Jackson directed every single scene.
No, they had up to 6 splinter units.
Right. But you got the feeling that all those units, all the members of the units had read the books and had very good understanding of what came before the scene that they were about to shoot and the scene that they are shooting. I don't get that feeling here. I feel like they just read through it once and oh, okay. Or I never read it, but let me go ahead and direct the episode because that's what I'm paid to do.
Brian Cogman is the one who keeps all of the continuity inside the scripts, and that's I would do that. That's how they did Heroes, by the way. Especially the first season.
That's
Heroes,
right. And this is an ensemble cast like Heroes.
And again, you could make the argument that Heroes really just pushed it forward. And, I don't know how limited they feel by only having 10 episodes as well. But yeah, I also think I'm sure they do it where they, everyone, all the Jon Snow stuff is shot by a splinter unit. But it is kind of interesting. I would think that I would just have a bunch of different directors directing each character's story, depending on where they're filming. Because, all of the stuff that they film with Daenerys is in Morocco. All of the stuff that they film with Jon Snow, I think they shoot it either really high up in Ireland or in Iceland. So, yeah,
Oof.
It's got to be rough. I would just create it in the studio, but whatever. I'm not the one, who's making the show.
Right. No, let's put them there, guys. Let's put them there. Yeah. And then if you had different directors for each of them, each of the different storylines would have a different look and a different feel, and yeah. But my final thought actually was one I had kind of recently. Writers, they want to write a book that they want to read. And George R. R. Martin has said that he wanted to create a world that drew readers in and made it so complete and compelling like they really were somewhere else. The way that he felt when he read J.R.R. Tolkien. And that's what he wanted to create for the readers. And, we're not at the end of Storm of Swords. We're, 70% of the way through the book, but some storylines are a little bit ahead, some are a little bit behind. But you just read, or watched, for me, read, because I'm talking about the books, I'll talk about them. You just, read, an entire war. The War of the Five Kings. And, yeah, some were killed by magic. One was killed by magic. One was killed by treachery. And it's just all, and it's not one of those fantasy, a classical fantasy, Dragonlance, or maybe I haven't read Lord of the Rings, but the Lord of the Rings movie. This is battles and mini fights and all these castles and all these forces and bannerment, an actual medieval thing, kind of sweeping across the entire land and actually coming to a resolution. He wrote the medieval type of war that he would want to read, and that is it. And it took the span of 3 books. That is really impressive.
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that out there. Just how monumental achievement that is.
Yeah. And again, to the show's credit, it does bring in a lot of things that people didn't care about. Yes, they de-emphasize the fantasy aspects, but they still have some of it in there. And it is compelling that it's basically just it's a very compelling medieval show. It shows that with good, I think it doesn't matter about the quality, the quality of the show will determine whether it's worth watching or not. And I think the compelling parts of the show are the actors are fantastic, the plotting is superb,
Yes.
and you want to find out what happens. Like, part of it is encouraging that it's like, I want to see all of these bad people. I want to see what happens to them. Are they ultimately rewarded, or do they get punished? Do they get what they deserve? And that's what's keeping me going, and that's what gets me excited about season 4. And I am very excited about season 4, to the point when I looked at the episode 1 of season 4 on HBO Max, we see a very interesting character who has a very interesting new haircut. Makes me wonder what's going on. So I am like, at the end of the day, I'm critical of them. I think that they probably should have had more oversight on them as writers, but I am very excited to dive into season 4, which I think is where we should end the episode.
Because of Schadenfreude.
Because
of Schadenfreude. You want to see something bad happen to somebody else, so you want to dive in that season because of Schadenfreude. Not because you're excited to see Daenerys like do her thing against the slavers and succeed.
No, I am excited about that.
Not because you want to see what happens to Jon.
I'm excited, God.
But because you want to see bad things happen to bad people.
Dude, I'm looking at no, that's not what I wanted to see. I'm looking at the previews of like what's to come, just like the shots that they're showing. Like possibly
the stills are beautiful.
Some spoilers.
I love the stills.
But oh no. No.
Yeah.
Is that what I think? Oh no. But anyway, I'm looking at the pictures.
Anyway.
And I'm just like looking at Tyrion holding a crossbow. Oh my God, I'm so excited for this season. I can't wait. This is all the good is this all the good stuff of the Storm of
It's
Swords?
super good. Yes.
I'm super excited. This looks amazing.
It's really cool. And I'm sorry, I was a little mean to you about the whole Schadenfreude thing.
No.
They're villains. There are villains, Claire, to bring it back to heroes. What your favorite line from the whole series?
The only episode I'm not looking forward to is Mockingbird, because we've got stupid middle finger. Hate that guy. What? So that's all I have to say. Anything else?
No. I'm
all right.
good.
Let's end this story. It's so funny because we thought we were gonna have like a lot less to talk about, but it still ended up being 3 hours. But that, you know what? It's just like every verse of Sir Waymar Royce. And that completes this one. My name is Matthew.
And I am Lucas.
And we will hear from you next time. Season 4.